Going to call to order the regular meeting of the Auburn Unified School District Board of Education for Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018. And we have a roll call, please.
President Black,
Here.
Vice President Stapleton Gray,
Here and not at City Hall.
Board Member Blanchard,
Here.
Board Member Clark,
Here.
Board Member Trupane, here, Student Board Member Ataliak,
Yes, I am at a school at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Board Member Silva.
For those who wish to participate, we will have a pledge of allegiance.
Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a reading of the AUSD mission.
The mission of the Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their full potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Superintendent, I believe you had a change you wanted to make.
I do. Thank you, President Black. If it pleases the board, I would like to request that we move review and action item number 9, Board of Education appointment of the City of Albany Parks and Recreation Commission, to the first spot in the review and action order, please.
All right. Okay. Then any other changes to the agenda? None. Can we have a motion?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Brings us to the board and brings us to the consent calendar. Okay, does anybody have any comments, or questions, or items they want to pull from the consent? Do you have any comment on the consent calendar? Then can we have a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we have the board and superintendent report.
Thank you, President Black. I have 2 items to report on. The first is that I had the opportunity yesterday to attend the freshman forums at Albany High School, and I really want to report that these 9th graders are amazing students. The one that I attended had to do with guns and the Second Amendment. And rather than having freshman debates, 2 teams actually did an awful lot of research to provide information, at least in this group, about different countries and how they, what their laws are around gun control. And then also to look at whether any of those countries' practices could or could not be maybe used in the United States. So it was a very good freshman debate, a forum. I wish I could have gotten to them all. And there are several other topics on it. Naveen and Mahima will be talking about that, but I'll put in the Friday update all the different topics that were there. The second is really to make a second plug for those in the community to please, if you have a chance, go online on our district website and write your local legislators, your senators, to support AB 2808, which is the Marsucci bill, but also to support the special education reform bill. I believe it's AB 3613. Thank you. There's lots of threes in there. There is still time to make your voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members. So we want to comment on the venture presentation that just done?
Sure. Gary Merham and I were at the Venture Open House up until a few minutes ago. It's still going on, even as we speak. They were considering, or they were asking us to go visit 8 proposed marketing activities and provide feedback on them. There were some very innovative, very creative marketing activities. I'm not sure who's going to win, but it was good to see such interest in innovation.
I was at the CNEA Music Festival, which is a adjudicated competition. And our middle school and high school bands performed. I don't think that any of our bands received less than an excellent rating from the judges, and several received unanimous superior ratings. It was very enjoyable.
Okay. Anything else? How about a student board report?
Absolutely. So next week is going to be spring break for Albany Unified School District. We have school during, starting on April 9th and will end on April 13th. And this is a well-deserved break for both teachers and staff. Have a safe and fun spring break.
The fifth grade fitness program begins in April. During the month of April, Cornell fifth graders will be participating in the Presidential Youth Fitness Program. The fitness program is a statewide fitness assessment for youth designed to assess aerobic capacity, muscular strength, flexibility, and body composition. Good luck to all.
There is a small party hosted by School Care. It's going to be at a Albany location, breathtaking views of the bay. It's time to dress up in your finest and put on those dancing shoes for a fabulous and elegant night out with live music, local beers, delicious cocktails, and good eats, all in support of our Albany schools. If you need a break from dancing, come browse the SM Albany shop for something to soothe the soul. The event is on Saturday, April 28th from 7:30 to 11:30 p.m.
Marin Elementary will be hosting a movie night featuring Coco on Friday, April 20th, 6 a.m., just kidding, 6 p.m. through 8 p.m. And also we wanted to comment about the freshman forum. So this year was a very innovative and integrated program. The structure has changed from being a debate and being more head-on and only understanding one side of an argument to being a more collaborative, discussion-based event. And it was really exciting to see freshmen, collaborate for issues on gun control and elderly care and voting, drugs, lots of things.
I watched a couple debates, or a single debate for myself, and I thought it was a pretty interesting process. It kind of took away from the competitive, combative style of debate and moved towards a more cooperative style of debate, encouraging students to find solutions that appease, both sides of your ground. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm also very happy to announce that our very own Hema Sawal will be attending Bryn Mawr for political science. So congratulations, Hema.
On some other exciting news, Vin will be attending the University of Arizona to pursue mechanical engineering.
And that concludes the student board report.
Thank you. Anyone have questions or comments? Ross?
So you all may not know this, but my wife's alma mater was Bryn Mawr, and my graduate alma mater was Arizona. So go Wildcats and all that.
Right.
How do you feel about winter?
I'm excited to invest in some coats and to see the changes of seasons and all of that. But I also grew up on the East Coast in DC, so it'll be nice to get back.
I don't think winter exists in Arizona, so.
But 118 my last year there, and the amazing thing is a 50, 60 degree shift over the course of a day. So wake you up.
Anything else? Perfect. Thank you. First staff report is on promoting safe, supportive, and collaborative environments for all students and staff.
Sorry, President Black, we have persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda.
We do. Yes. Persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. Seeing none, we will move on to promoting safe, supportive, and collaborative environments for all students and staff.
Thank you, President Black. I'm going to turn this over to Carrie Neerheim, our Director of Student Services. Ms. Neerheim.
Good evening, President Black, Board of Trustees, and congratulations to you both. That's very exciting. My report will be brief this evening. I just wanted to let the board know that I, last week, attended my first meeting of the Albany Comes Together Committee. I'm a new member to that committee. I was very impressed with the robust work that had already been done. And it's a group that is very pointed and focused in what they're looking for and their commitments to making change and supporting students. They had narrowed down to 100 recommendations, and looking at those, many of them have already had progress made on them. They are in progress. Some of the recommendations still have research yet to be done. Our next task is to prioritize about 30 of the remaining to see which we want to go forward with next. I'd also like to point out that there was an allocation of funds to the Albany High principal to use at her discretion in support of students harmed last spring. So I am very proud and grateful to be a part of that committee and look forward to the work ahead.
I'll make a point of clarification. It's actually, the allocation was made for students who were affected, so that could expand the scope a little bit, but it's really for Ms. Ritchie to really help our students this spring have a really good ending to their school year. And so some of the allocations might be used to support the Black Student Union graduation, as well as and I know it's not called the Latino Student Union anymore, there's another name for it, and I apologize, I can never remember, but also to help with that as well. So ACT did allocate a little bit of funding for that.
Do we have any questions? Audience? Oh.
Yeah, actually, maybe you could give us a sense of timeline on some of this. And I know that you know, when we heard this before, there was a lot to try to digest, and so I'm sure the committee has its hands full trying to put these into separate categories. But I know we did talk about some of the questions had to do with board policy, and maybe one of the board members who's on the policy committee might like to comment on the timeline on that one, and maybe you might like to comment on the timeline on some of the other recommendations.
I think I can comment on the timeline. It was Ms. Neerheim's very first meeting. So this spring there are 4 meetings, and the goal is to review the recommendations, to make some priorities, to look at what is currently in place, what is actually being in progress, what needs more research, and what needs to be particularly added. The goal is for us to come up with a 3-year action plan, which the board had asked for, that we will present. My goal is to present it at the first June board meeting. While we probably could do it at the second June board meeting, I'd like to present this before school is out. So we're very focused, and we use those 90 minutes. We have a real good, robust agenda. I don't know if a board member would like to talk about the board policy committee.
The policy committee has met twice so far. The first time was just basically organizational. The second meeting, which we just had, we've started going through policy. Of course, as you know, there's a tremendous amount of board policy, but we're starting with the ones that were highlighted by the ACT committee as being particularly relevant to situations such as policies on harassment and bullying and student discipline. And we started just by running a comparison of our existing policy with changes recommended by CSBA, which, as you know, every year updates policies based on changes in law. And there are some of the policies, there are major changes. Not necessarily so much in import, but a lot in wording and detail. So it's going to take some time for the committee to get through all of these policies, but the work's been started. I can't give you that. It'll be finished.
Just to follow up, did you have any sense of whether some of the CSBA updates would in of themselves address some of the changes that came, or the recommendations that came to us? Or is there a whole other level of processing that's going to need to go on to kind of match where we are now with the CSBA changes and compare and contrast all of that with the recommendations that we saw?
And I don't think the CSBA changes really address the issues so much. So we are going to have to be looking at them. There are a couple of people from the ACT committee on the board policy committee, and they have this very much in mind. So we're looking at the policies to see if they cover what we need covered, and of course we can add to the policy, which we'll be doing. And some of the deletions by CSBA will probably end up reinserting because I think that they were valuable. But CSBA isn't really looking at the kind of issues we're looking at. They're just more looking at being in conformance with. Yeah.
Would we approve the contract for the facilitator for the Albany Coming Together group? Part of that was for a video project, I think, public service announcement. Could the board get an update on that at some point?
Yes, we can bring an update to the board. I know that we do have a draft, and I can provide an update to the board.
Anything else? I think we're good. Thank you for your update. Next is the special education update.
Thank you, President-elect trustees. I've asked Katie Babcock, who is our SELPA director. SELPA is Special Education Local Plan Area. It's a very big, long title. And she's our SELPA director, and she works with 5 districts. And each superintendent in the 5 districts sits on a SELPA board. I'm one of those. So I'll turn this over to Katie. I've asked her to bring some information. She's done a lot of research around some of the issues across the Bay Area, maybe the state, around issues with professionals and more.
So thank you for the opportunity. I've been sitting in or watching recent board meetings, and I'm really pleased that the critical role of paraeducators in special education has been highlighted in this discussion. There are about 130 special education local plan areas in California, and these are literally geographic areas that California breaks up into, so that within a SELPA, there is a broad enough continuum of special education services that is more than what one district could provide on its own. So in our SELPA, we've got the Albany Unified School District, Berkeley, Piedmont, Alameda, and Emeryville. So I started just within our SELPA, and you may not be surprised to know or to hear that each of the 4 other districts in our SELPA struggled in a very similar way with the issues of attracting and retaining paraeducators and also absenteeism. And in fact, my perception was that this is a universal struggle, issue, or challenge. So I decided to test my perception by asking my colleagues, there's about 134 SELPA directors in California, 2 questions. Number 1, are you struggling with this issue? And number 2, what are the districts in your SELPAs doing that they feel is actually helping them to move forward with supporting the paraeducators, the service, the job, the role, all of the issues that you all have been talking about. And if they haven't found something, what do they wish they could implement? So I don't think you'd be surprised, but there was a unanimous answer to number 1, yes. So I don't know if it's 100% of districts in California, but it's very close. It is a universal challenge. And I'd like to read to you quotes on some of those sample responses I got to question number 2. Not that these are prescriptive or advice for Albany. Albany's in the best position to come up with its own solutions to address the challenge in Albany. But more, you might hear some confirmation of what you've been grappling with, and you might get some new ideas or get some other ideas provoked, or say, hey, no, we don't want that here. So I've got job design, retention, and recruiting, and what you'll notice, or what I noticed as I got these responses was sometimes there's a strategy that hits all 3. So as you look at your strategies, something to keep in mind. So job design, yes, many districts were looking at raising salaries, longer hours, and some districts added benefits. Some divided the position into levels, with the higher levels providing greater technical expertise or skills, particularly to address challenging student behavior. And I know you've been talking about that. Separate salaries for special education para-educators, because some districts have general education para-educators. Additional stipends for para-educators. Certificates to para-educators that had no absences, and then having a drawing for certificates. And you'll notice as I go into more of these examples, people are coming up with big picture systems things, and also fine-tuning, threading the needle to get at how people feel about their jobs along with their competencies. Changing the job title to independence facilitator, very powerful, because what we are always trying to do in special education is to build independence. Recognition and maybe even reward on a career ladder for fading paraeducator support. So if I'm a paraeducator and I've got a history of, I worked with this child, they met their goals, and now they need 25% less support of this extra adult in their learning world. That's a success. And if I'm doing that time after time in a consistent, predictable way, that probably means I'm using evidence-based practices to get there, and that should be recognized and rewarded. In the category of retention, similar to your conversations, training came up in many responses. Improved training, increased training, more training empowers parents and motivates attendance. Video learning, and don't forget pre-service training, so that they're coming in already with some knowledge and skills, as well as the in-service training and ongoing training. Invest in team building between principals, paraeducators, teachers, and case managers. And I hear that a lot in our CELPA, not just singling out Albany. Paraeducators are often asking for, we need to be on the same page, we need to be in the same training, we need to have the same, we need to be playing to the same music, we need to be on the same page. Train teachers on how to warmly welcome paraeducators. And how to welcome subs. Work with HR to be customer service oriented, so once paras start, they feel they are treated fairly and are assisted. What they're suggesting is it's not enough to treat them fairly and to assist them, but to help them feel and experience that reality. Third category, recruiting. Establish a committee specifically to address paraeducator recruitment, retention, and career development. Local job fairs. And the next one is probably a very large district. CELPAs, we're a small CELPA, we have 5 districts. Tulare County has 44 school districts. And you know LA Unified is either the first or the second largest school district in the United States. So we've got a really varied picture in California. So this next one is probably a large district, but you might get something from this. They monthly, the special ed team, HR, and principals speed interview candidates with a set of questions. Those approved go to day 2 interview and training, where they receive instruction in the job responsibilities and a quiz. Those that pass are processed immediately for placement, and principals can select from a qualified list of trained applicants who are immediately ready to begin. The last time we did this, it yielded 63 qualified applicants that we offered positions to. Recruitment package. Release time for parents to go to those job fairs, because, and this is a quote, it is most effective when paraeducators talk about the work that they do to other potential paraeducators. Social media, banners posted in multiple locations and rotated to capture different audiences, and principals recruiting within their communities. So the last piece of information I want to share is a comparison of salaries. Now, this is just within our CELPA. I had a task in December where I needed the average salaries of several special education positions. Paraeducators was one of them. So compared with the other 4 districts, Albany, on average, pays $3,233 more than one of the districts in our CELPA, $2,211 less than one of the other districts, $5,096 less than one, and $2,701 more than one of the districts, and that's on an annual basis. So I just thought maybe it would be helpful to provide some information from outside of Albany to inform the Albany discussion. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions or to bring some different or additional information at a future meeting.
Questions? Really?
So thank you very much. That was very helpful. I wanted to talk a little bit about salary and benefits for a few minutes. And I guess the first question is, in the salary comparisons, do all the districts pay benefits?
Yes. But what I did was salary only.
Sure.
I also did PERS separately and total compensation package. I have the total compensation, which includes also the health benefits. I have the total compensation package that includes all 3, salary, retirement, and health benefits. But the comparison I did had 3 categories, including the total. But what I read to
Yeah,
you
it
was
was just the
salary
salary.
only, just to get started.
And if you were to look at the total compensation, would those be numbers that you could give us, or
Sure.
could you give us a sense of where we fall in that?
Yeah, I do have the total. So it's, I wasn't sure what would be interesting.
Yeah, they're both interesting.
Okay. So Albany pays $1,259 more than one district, and this is total compensation, all 3 categories. $7,069 less than one district in our CELPA. $4,375 less than one district, and $4,275 more than one district.
That's quite a range.
So it's interesting. It's good for thought.
Was there any evidence that the districts that pay the higher compensation have less trouble recruiting and retaining parents?
I don't have any information that indicates that one way or the other. That's a great question. But you're talking about within our CELPA. In our CELPA, it was fairly, I was asking CELPA directors throughout California, when I talked to the special ed directors in our CELPA, I don't see a correlation between these salary differences and the challenges with paraeducators.
So even the highest paying districts had trouble getting.
It doesn't seem to make a difference. That would be something I could dig into to get more specific information to see if there's any nuances that you all might leverage to inform decisions in Albany. I'd be happy to dig deeper, but from working with the directors and talking with them, I don't see that at surface value.
Just,
So this question is probably for our staff, and that is there a threshold number of hours to be eligible for full benefits?
Benefits is prorated based on full-time equivalent. So even somebody working 90% of full-time will receive 90% of their benefits.
So if I'm understanding correctly, Ellen, your microphone may not be on because you said she couldn't hear you.
So for our school district, we pay full benefits up to Kaiser Family, and benefits is based on the hours of the position that they work. And so for a full-time position, they would receive full benefits paid by the school district. If they work 90% of full-time, then they would have 90% of their benefits paid.
So I guess my follow-up question then is, I confess I find myself a little confused by hearing both from some people that our paraeducators like the hours they're working, or at least many of them do, but also hearing that many would like more hours. So I think both realities exist. And now I think that this is interesting, because that means that many of our paraeducators really are not receiving full benefits because they don't work a full FTE, at least the way we categorize it, right?
And I think I would add that if you were to ask any one of our paras, whether they are full-time employees or part-time, that if they wanted full benefits, they would all say yes. That I think would be universal. I don't think I heard ever a para saying, I don't want to. I understand what you're saying, but
You never heard anybody say that they would not want full benefits, is that what I'm hearing?
yes, if they,
That's no surprise.
Yeah.
But you did hear some say that they would not necessarily want to work the hours that would be the hours for a full FTE, right?
Some did not want to. Some actually wasn't necessarily about the hours of the. There were certain days they did not want to work, and there were many that wanted to have increased hours.
Others?
Regarding how much we pay our paraeducators, does it make a difference, with I guess our neighbors? Because in past meetings it's been brought up that our competitors or neighboring districts like El Cerrito and Berkeley pay our paraeducators higher, and I'm wondering if the difference in salary is, it's important that maybe those districts that where we pay higher are further away. Does that make sense?
Are you asking, are they beating it out in the competition due to salary, even though they might be farther away from where the paraeducator lives?
No, I'm asking if paraeducator salaries are higher closer to us, and I guess Albany looks like we're paying less compared to the districts nearer to us, and then when we go further out, we have districts where those districts are paying their paraeducators less. I'm wondering regionally what the differences look like.
Okay, so you're so maybe like the ones literally adjacent to Albany as compared to, say, Piedmont. Yes. Okay. Well, I don't have the El Cerrito salaries, but that again would be something we could certainly get.
I think, just to reiterate Fahima's point, I think it's a really important point to see how our salaries compare and contrast with salaries around our area regionally. The Bay Area is known to be a lot higher paying, we have a lot higher cost of living and all these things, so I think it's important to examine those costs within the context of our regional location. And I think that that's one important thing that we create.
So I think I can answer half of that question. The 5 districts that are in our SELPA, where I believe that Ms. Babcock was quoting some of these numbers, are districts that are, in terms of Alameda County, close to us. So Berkeley, Piedmont, Emory, of course Alameda's on an island, and then Albany. Oakland would be the next closest, going south from Emory. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 districts surrounding us. What we don't have right now is West Contra.
So those numbers are pretty easy to get online. So I and or others who are in Albany can do a real quick cut comparison.
John?
So I wonder if I could guess, is it possible that Emory and Piedmont might be the districts that are able to pay more than, or that are paying more than Albany?
can get this online. I
Yeah,
just sort of didn't want to get too much into the
Yeah,
individual districts, but it isn't actually the one you know. Although it's a combination and it shifts. And I think the question was important is to really look at the salary versus the total compensation. And that's where you really want to get at to deeper into what is the need and the desire here. Because if it's benefits, then you might want to pay more attention to that if it's straight salary. And a lot of the research, I mean, not to diminish the importance of salary, I'd be the last person to do that, but a lot of research shows that it's other factors are equally and sometimes even more powerful to attract people and even more importantly to keep people in their positions, particularly in special education. A lot of times it's the work that attracts them and it's the work that makes it really hard to stay. So that's why I wanted to read this sampling. A lot of it has to do with how people feel about their level of competency. So that's where the training comes in. And are they important in the eyes of the other adults that they're working with? That's where the team and relationship. And a lot of that stuff is within the power of a system to work with. Again, yes, definitely, salary comparison is very important as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to reiterate your point. I mean, there's two main, I guess, prospects to this. We have to be able to keep the paraeducators we have, also bring in more paraeducators. And I think the biggest or best solution here is definitely combining some sort of more team building and making Albany a place where people want to work and keep coming back to work, and also making sure that Albany has, you know, the enticing and incentivizing prospects for someone to actually want to work here.
We have some questions, comments from the audience. Anyone from the board? I want to thank you very much for coming here and bringing all that great information. We have one review and discussion item, the adoption of elementary instructional materials on reading comprehension.
Thank you, President Black. Trustees, I'd like to turn this over to Marie Williams, our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. Ms. Williams.
Good evening, Superintendent Williams, Board President Black, board members, community members. I'm really excited to be bringing this item before you this evening. If you'll remember a couple board meetings ago, myself along with two of our teachers on special assignment, Misha Child from Cornell Elementary and Rebecca Eros from Ocean View Elementary, came and provided sort of a summary and overview of the tremendous work that has been happening over the past few years in terms of implementing state standards. And a couple of meetings ago, we brought before you a proposal to recommend instructional materials having to do with decoding and phonemic awareness. And today, I am bringing for your potential review and approval at a later meeting, a recommendation to adopt units of study in reading as our district's K-5 reading comprehension program. I want to let you know that this was a really robust and thorough process that was undertaken by our pilot teachers. Our original timeline had us beginning the pilot in the fall and attempting to make a decision in November. And in November, we were not in a place to make a decision. I think, as I noted in the backup, we were equally enamored with both curricula and realized we couldn't buy both. And so teachers agreed very graciously to continue the pilot and to pilot the other curricula. And so we came together again in March, and over a period of one full day, split into 2 half days, meeting with pilot teachers and really digging in and getting their feedback, and then bringing everybody back the next day for a final confirming decision. We were able as a group to select units of study in reading. The decision was not unanimous, but I would say it was overwhelming. And in general, all of the teachers agreed that there are so many great benefits to adopting units of study reading. Not only does it align with the writing program that we already have adopted from units of study, but teachers talked a lot about the ways in which this program supported students to become avid readers, and about the ways in which this program supported teachers in their own professional growth and pushed them in their own professional growth, and supported students in having rich and deep conversations. And so, as noted on the backup, right along with the conversation about making the decision, there was also extensive discussion about the supports needed to really make this program work. And so we talked about a need for moving forward, much collaboration time, allowing teachers to get together, plan together, talk to each other about how the units are going. We also realized that there is a need in order to implement this program properly to purchase reading materials to support the students in the classroom. So as noted in the backup, there is an allocation in the LCAP that will allow us to purchase reading materials to begin to build leveled libraries. That will be an ongoing work that happens over a period of years. I know many teachers spend their own dollars on building classroom libraries. And here now we are in this place where we have adopted as a district a reading program. And so it will become incumbent upon us to support the full implementation of that with providing libraries, classroom libraries, school-wide libraries. So we're still talking about how that will work, but we are really committed to making this implementation a successful one. I'll tell you, as the decision was made and we were dispersing, a person who was in the room said, in 11 years, I didn't think this would happen, and I came just to see for myself if it would. And so we're really proud of the work of the pilot teachers in coming to this decision. We're really excited about moving forward with building this balanced literacy program. You'll hear from me again in regards to other materials to build out this program. But tonight this item is review and discussion. The process would be that the materials would be available for 30 days for public inspection, after which time we will come back to the board and ask you to give your approval. Thank you.
You have questions? Board? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say thank you to the teachers who are willing to pilot it, and if the majority of them recommend this, I'm 100% on it.
Anyone else? Questions or comments from you? Go ahead.
I assume this articulates across grades K through 5.
Yes, absolutely. I will say that one of the conversations at the lower grades was that, we are teaching students how to read. What we've adopted is a reading comprehension program, and at grades kindergarten and grade 1, students are learning to read. And so there are still some areas in which we will need to provide additional materials to support that goal for students, but this is an articulated K through 5 program.
And I might also point out that under Common Core, reading comprehension is now very important even in math classes. So a good foundation in reading is going to be more important than ever. So thank you very much, and thank you to all the teachers who did all this work. And I think, is it the will of the board to want to come back and just be on consent?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We come to our first review and action item, which was moved up from number 9. And it's the Board of Education appointment of the City of Albany Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, President Black. The purpose of this item is for the Board of Trustees to approve the Board of Education appointment to the following City of Albany Parks and Recreation Commission. City of Albany Parks and Rec Commission advises the City Council on all matters of public recreation, public parks facilities, and public landscaping, including street trees and parkways in the city. The Board of Education appoints 2 adult members, one of whom, Sue Mellors, recently resigned as of March 6, 2018. The Board of Education now needs to appoint 1 adult member. There are 2 candidates who have submitted their applications, Hillary Sardinas and Francis Kelly, and a statement of interest for each of these candidates was attached to the board backup.
Great. Are either or both of these candidates available? Hillary Sardinas. Okay. Is Francis Kelly here? Okay.
I think it's also important to note that we lost our last representatives not because of disinterest, but because they were actually interested in advocating for something, and as a conflict of interest, they chose to step down from that position. So
Any other?
Yeah, actually, Ross just said part of what I would say, and I should elaborate also that has to do on whether your residence is within 500 feet of a city park, for example, where you might be actively engaged in some decision or some recommendation. So that's a consideration. If that's a conflict because
But you could recuse yourself from a particular conflict.
you can recuse yourself from a particular conflict, but then you're in the position of not being able to contribute to that discussion. And that was
The deal breaker.
that was the concern.
So Ms. Cardenas, would you mind coming up? As long as you're here, we could. I was very impressed with your qualifications. What's not in here, what I wonder if you'd be willing to comment on is, since this is the Board of Education representative to this commission, we're particularly interested in how you would advocate for the students of all.
Sure. So I have two children. One is 7 months old and one is 3 years old. But I also support nieces and nephews who live in Albany. So I help them with their homework, and we often go to parks and play. I'm an entomologist, so we'll look at the insects, or we've gone to Albany Hill to look at the monarchs. And so I have a lot of passion for botany, nature, entomology, and so one of the things I would advocate for is the science curriculum and having more engagement for students related to that curriculum.
Does anyone have questions? Anyone in the audience? Questions, comments? Well, we're in the very, thank you very much. We're in the very unusual circumstance of having two candidates, so we have to actually vote.
This is a problem, yes.
This is an unusual problem. So I think we should just, we have to do it in the open, we can't have secret balloting for it. So we'll just start. You've read the candidate statements, you've heard from Ms. McGinnis. All in favor of Ms. McGinnis for this position? I think Ms. McGinnis has the position. Thank you very much for coming and showing so much interest. You're most welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're not required to. Okay, we have Resolution 2017-18, reduction of classified school services.
Thank you, President Black. And yearly, the district determines which, if any, classified positions need to be reduced due to lack of work or lack of funds. And employees who are affected by these layoffs are placed on a 39-month rehire list. And should the funds or work return, the employees are contacted to return to work in order of seniority. These are positions that were funded under some donation money and is not allocated for the 18-19 school year. And should that money become available, then we would rehire these employees back based on seniority. So the recommendation is for the board to appoint Resolution 2017-18-20.
Okay, so to be clear, this is a situation we face every year. Unfortunately, the money that we get from the state and other governments is not sufficient to pay for all the services we have. Some of the money comes from the generous contributions of the public, and we can't pre-allocate that money before we've gotten it. We can't just assume we're going to get a certain amount from school care, for example. So positions that are funded in that way can't be filled until we actually have the money in hand. So very reluctantly, we have to let these people go at the end of the year with the hope that we will be able to rehire them later.
And I want to make clear that the paraeducator under this resolution, these are not our special education paraprofessionals.
Do we have any questions, Jake?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I just want to make sure I'm remembering correctly. I thought over the last few months, when I went back to December, we were talking about possible reductions for the 18-19 year. I thought it was stated more than one time that there was going to be no layoffs for the 18-19 school year.
What I said was that there would be no certificated layoffs for the 18-19 school year.
Okay, I can go back and check because I don't remember it being specified that it was just certificated. And as far as the allocation of funds, we are receiving more money next year than we did this year. And I'm not okay with letting these people go.
You have a specific question about the funds?
We have more money coming in 18-19 than we did in 17 and 18, so we can find a way to pay these folks.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I actually think that's a good point, and I think it's good for us to stop and take stock of that and think about it. At one point, these positions probably were entirely supported by district funding. We've been through 15 years of budget cuts, and the community has really stepped up and filled the gap when the district has not been able to support the same number of positions that it used to support. I think there is a larger conversation to be had at some point about what do we want the district to be responsible for. So I really appreciate that, that thought that at one point it was just given that we, the district, provided support for librarians at every site and for library techs at every site. That was just part of the package, and it was out of necessity that some of those positions were eliminated, and the community has really stepped up to try to keep those positions intact. And so at the very least, I think what I'd like to do is recognize and thank those who have raised money to keep these positions in line. I think that what that represents is a statement by the community that these positions are important positions and we don't want to lose them. You note in the financial information this amounts to $167,000. It's 2.5 FTE library technicians, various other positions. And so it definitely is worth noting that the community feels that these are important positions and is willing to go out and raise money to support them. I don't think I'm ready to simply commit district funds to these positions at this point, even though I'm open to that conversation. I'm sensitive to our budget and what the constraints are. But I do appreciate the point being raised that at one point these were the responsibility of the district. So for now, I'll just let it go at saying thank you to the organizations that have raised the money to support these positions. I sure hope they're willing to do that for another year. And we'll see if they are, then we can bring the positions back.
Any other?
I agree with Charlie. I think it's tremendous that our community donates enough funds to keep 4.7 FTEs worth of staff working in our schools. I wanted to add to the conversation that one thing that we are losing next year is our teachers on special assignment. And I also, I think Paul once brought up how important he felt those teachers on special assignments were, and if that was a program that we could possibly retain in the future, that would be a high priority. It would be a high priority for me as well. So I'm also hoping that our fundraising organizations will be able to transfer funds in August to fully fund these positions, and that we'll be able to have these people back.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to add one more thing. I wish I would went back and looked at the minutes or the YouTube, but I don't remember it being stated that it was just going to be certificated staff that wouldn't be laid off. And I have a problem with if it wasn't specified that way. It's more or less going back on our word. If we said we're not going to lay people off, that's what we need to do.
We can go back and look at the notes, but I do remember specifically saying that I was committed not to have any, and I think I said it twice, but I know I said it once. I said that this is for certificated layoffs because I was talking about our teachers and counselors. I mean, I can go back and look at the notes again, but I'm pretty sure I remember saying certificated. Alan, did you want to add anything?
Sure, just one. Can people hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is one thing to point out is these are people's lives, and this is never an easy decision. But these people who have accepted these positions, our Human Resources Department does a great job of informing them from the very beginning about the temporary status of these positions based on the source of funding for them.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from the audience? Jacob?
I just have one more thing. If we're going to lay them off, the reason we're doing this resolution is because it's time sensitive. Is there any way that we can table this until we actually find out what we said? Because I have a real problem with if we said we weren't going to lay people off, and then we are, and then we do this, and it turns out that that is what we said. I'm not okay with that.
Does this have to be passed tonight? Or can it go back at the next?
For classified layoffs, there is if I remember correctly, a 60-day notification that you have to give to the employees. It's a CSEA, I cannot remember what the rule is, but whatever the date of the layoff notice, that we still keep them in employee service for 60 days.
Probably April 30th. This is June 30th at the end of the year, which would give us time to wait till next board meeting to find out what we said.
Al, is it the last day, the actual student day, or would it be June 30th? June 30th.
What we have in front of us says, yes, June, as of June 30th, et cetera.
So we have time?
I believe if we could bring it back to the next board meeting if needed.
Yes,
Okay, so we have, I'll take that as a motion to table. Do we have?
Well, unless the rest of the board doesn't care what we said before. I mean, if we're going to find out that we said we weren't going to lay anybody off, and we're going to turn around and do it anyway, then there's no need in pushing it back.
It's up to you, Jacob. If you want to make the motion to table and see how that goes, if you want.
Well, I'm asking if the board wants to keep our word.
Charlie?
You know, I'm open to going either way simply because I think it's understood with these positions. And what we might have said in the board meeting is probably not as relevant as what the Human Resources Department told people when they were hired for these positions. I'm okay with tabling it. And if there's a motion to table, I'm willing to second. What I do want to point out is that what's important for our fundraising groups is that they know clearly what the district is funding and what the district is not funding. So they don't want to be in the position of being asked to fund something that the district is trying to fund. They need to know for their fundraising efforts that they are raising money for A, B, C, and D. And so it is important for us to make that decision and to be clear about it at some point. If it's at the end of April, I'm willing to go with that.
Can't we just say that we're willing to fund these positions, which would make it much clearer for them that they can go ahead and try to fundraise for other categories? I mean,
Well, if revenues are going up next year, costs are going up next year, and it's not like we're going to be running a surplus at all. We kicked the can of say, $2 million budget cuts down the road. I think we're coming back and saying, what can we pare back? Not, well, why can't we just pay out of the general fund these positions, which have been provided only because outside funding organizations have given us the money earmarked for that. We're not running a surplus. We can't just spend the money we don't have on these positions, retaining them.
You know, I think that we can't make that decision tonight because it's not really an agenda item. You know, I think if there's a conversation around what's going to be in the next year's budget, it has to be part of an agendized item about the next year's budget. It would have to include consideration of other positions. I don't think we could just make that decision about this particular thing that's here before us tonight.
The timing allows, sure, pushing this to the next meeting.
The timing does allow tabling. Do you want to make that motion to table, Jay?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so
Then I'll
Charlie
second it.
seconded it. So we have a motion to table in a second. All in favor of tabling this till next meeting? Aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we'll bring it back next time. Okay, second item in review and action is overnight field trip, Albany High School to Northern California State Science Olympiad. Turlock.
Thank you, President Black. And I'm going to turn this over to Marie Williams.
Yeah, so I'll start with this phrase that I just learned myself recently from Valerie Risk at the high school. I'm going to read what she wrote. The Science Olympiad team started 6 years ago at the middle school and then moved up to the high school 3 years ago. The team went from not placing at the regional competition in 2015, their first year, to earning 4th place at regionals 2016, to earning 1st place at regionals and 5th place at state last year. This year, they again earned 1st place at regionals, winning medals in 20 out of 23 events. They have made a reputation for themselves in 3 short years. They have become formidable in competition in an arena with very many competitive schools, both public and private, some of which dedicate extensive resources to Science Olympiad. Our students will be representing us once again in regionals because there is a need for them to do setup and they don't want to take chances with travel or getting stuck on the road. They've made a decision this year to travel the night before to make sure that they're well rested and are fully prepared to give their best in battle the next day. So we're asking that you approve this overnight field trip for students to participate in Science Olympiad. It's at CSU Stanislaus in Turlock, California.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just really give a shout out to the middle school and that at some point this sort of critical mass of kids came together and where there had not been a program at the high school, there was this thing bubbling up. So it's really great when those sorts of things can get to Genesis and be nurtured all the way up. We now have a award-winning high school team because something came together at that middle school.
It actually was named after.
Thank you, yeah. Any comments or questions from anybody? Can we have a motion?
I move that we approve this overnight field trip for the Science Olympiad team.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, since everybody didn't just get up and leave, I'm guessing you're here for another item. Might possibly be the one that's coming up now, the timing and sequence of Ocean View Elementary and Grand Elementary School Facilities Project.
Thank you, President Black. I'm going to turn this over to Alan Guard. Alan, do you need the portable?
Good evening, board.
You need to really have that microphone right next to you. It might work good if you just pull it off the stand.
Hello? Great. So sorry for the setup. I just like to keep everybody in suspense. Tonight we're going to talk about a plan that's been brought to the board for review and action. It's for the timing and sequence of review and learning elementary schools. As some of you may be aware, this really began almost 6 years ago with the first structural engineering report that was received in 2012. We'll go over some of the history that's included in the board backup, but we'll talk about the plan. So it's the importance of this board item is that it has multiple effects where it'll influence plans for temporary housing, for issuance of bonds, and for our ability to realize these structural projects.
Excuse me, Ellen, I'm not sure that you're I'm not sure you're projecting as well as you could. Maybe if you just tip, yeah, like that. If you tip the mic like that, it works much better. Thank you so much.
I don't do a lot of stand-up, so I understand. Okay, so we're first going to talk about can we afford rebuilding Ocean View and River. The reason for this is because when we first learned about the seismic mitigation, the seismic deficiencies for Marine and Ocean View, we learned about them in 2012 and it was confirmed in 2013. Those structural engineering reports stated that we would not have that in a significant earthquake of about 6.8 magnitude or above, that the two elementary schools would be what's called red tag, which means that post-earthquake we would not be able to use the buildings. The concern then went to how do we find funds to address this issue. We learned that the state had some seismic mitigation funding from an old state bond that could have potentially helped pay for this. And so what we did was we developed what's called a facilities master plan that really looked at all the needs throughout the school. That facilities master plan was brought to the board in 2014, and we looked at how we can, so we looked at what are our options at all of our school sites. In 2015, the City of Albany developed their, it's called a general plan, which is a 20-year outlook of what the city is projecting. And in that city plan, they projected that the Albany population would grow by over 15 to 18% over a 20-year period. And so that was new information that was not incorporated in the facilities master plan. So we wanted to find ways where we can both address seismic safety for Ocean View and Marin Elementary, as well as address current and long-term overcrowding. Current overcrowding referring to the Albany Middle School and our inability to find specialty spaces for the Albany High School. But then also, 20 years from now, if we were to grow based on the city projections, we would not have we wouldn't have space to accommodate that additional. So that led to the board's approval of placing 2 bond measures on the ballot, which was for bond measures B and E. With bond measures B and E, we were then able to really look at implementation plan for all of our schools. What was known and somewhat deferred since 2012 was that in order to address the seismic deficiencies of Marine and Ocean View Elementary School, we would need to find a location for students to continue to learn during that time. And so with that, we needed to find ways that were both cost-effective, that can be acceptable to staff, acceptable to the community, and realistic to families. Through informal discussions, but a lot of the same messages were we really need to keep kids in Albany, and we have limited bond dollars, and we need to use those bond dollars on limited buildings. One of the reasons for that is because we didn't want to make payments for the next 30 years on something we would only have for 3 or 4 years. So what that led to was moving forward with the Albany Middle School Annex, which is across the street from the Albany Middle School, and the Albany High School Addition project, which we have just after this morning. With the added classrooms of those 2 projects, we then have added capacity in order to ensure that we can house students in Albany. It's not saying that elementary students will be going to those 2 buildings, but because we have more classrooms, we have that flexibility to do so. And so if there's decision tonight, then we would be able to move forward with continuing to develop a temporary housing solution for the elementary schools, and the plan at that point would be to bring a recommendation to the board before the end of the school year, so that families and staff would be informed, and we would know, and we would have all of next year in order to work out details. And so with that, the other kind of background is we're not the only school district that passed bond measures. There have been over $70 billion passed in the past 6 years. And so there's just a lot of work everywhere, and with a lot of work, there's a lot of prices go up. And so there's a concern about not being able to really rebuild both Ocean View and Marin Elementary. And so what this plan is recommending is a plan forward where we can address both rebuilding Ocean View and Marin, and a timing and sequence plan. So that's 6 years just in the past 2 minutes. Can we afford to rebuild Ocean View and Marin Elementary? Yes. The reason for that is because for Ocean View and Marin Elementary, the layouts were both developed in the 1970s. Ocean View was originally built as a middle school, and so the layout for Ocean View is that it is very exposed to the outdoors. There's 60 plus doors that open to the outside, and it's not to cause any alarm or concern with the community, just stating that that's the layout. For Marin Elementary, there are no there is no way to fully close the campus because the front of the campus is open. There isn't a way to fully close it. And so with rebuilding the two schools, we would be able to have safety and security at the forefront in addressing that. The other piece is equity. And so I guess what we want to ensure is that what we do to one school, we do to the other school, and that we're able to maintain continuity with community need. By rebuilding both schools, we're able to provide a different layout than the current campuses that provides more easy access to, we're able to have these schools become more of a community resource than the current layout. And because Albany is very developed and space is in high demand, by revising the layout of these two schools, we're able to really make it something that's used year-round, all day long, and not just for our The other one is long-term flexibility, and so with both campuses, they utilize the full layout of the land, and because of the growth that has been experienced, we have portables throughout the campuses. Marin Elementary especially, and with that, it restricts our ability to add space for more growth. The other item is optimal learning environments. So for Ocean View and Marin Elementary, the classroom sizes are 20 to 30% smaller than a standard classroom size. They're also half the size of a recommended kindergarten classroom. And so with that, our staff have been great in maximizing the use of spaces, but I'm sure they'd be able to they'd be able to find more ways to utilize more space and utilize it effectively. It's also, we would be able to use current best practices on building. The school board has adopted board policy 3510, which, among other things, allows us to reach CHIPS verified status on our major projects. CHIPS being collaborative for high-performing schools, and so we're able to use a nationwide framework on best practices for natural ventilation, for daylighting, and really to develop optimal learning spaces. And so with all of that, that kind of brings us to the plan. And I will show the plan. And so we cannot afford not to. So the plan is that the Albany Middle School Annex is in progress, and it's planned to be open early 2019 for the Albany High School edition, which would be presented right after this board item. The goal is that it would be completed by July 31st, 2019. And so with both campuses in operation, we will be able to move forward with Ocean View Elementary as the first school to be rebuilt. By taking action tonight, we will be able to move forward with reconvening Ocean View staff and community on really designing and redesigning what that campus looks like. And then the plan is, once that is complete, we will be able to move forward with Marin Elementary, beginning construction on the 21-22 school year. Let's see. So
Can you just be clear when they'd be closed?
Yes. So with this plan, Ocean View would be closed for the 1920 school year and 2020-2021 school year, potentially. The goal is that we would be under construction from summer to summer, so that we would be able to maximize that time and ideally only be closed for one school year. But with the temporary housing solution, by keeping kids in Albany, we would at least have that flexibility if things are delayed, that students can kind of be in place in the solution. But that solution would be brought to the board before the end of the school year. So the concern is that we want to ensure that these campuses are rebuilt, and we would have fixed budgets in order to do so. Oh wait. So this is the point. There's concern from the original middle school project that occurred in the 1990s and the high school project that was rebuilt in the 1990s. The concern was that the designs were developed, people were happy, they moved forward with construction, funding wasn't fully available, and so they needed to make cuts, and they needed to do so without full buy-in from staff. Is what I heard from the staff that were a part of that design process. And so this plan is not that. So the concern from the middle school and high school projects, for these projects, was that by having the cost overruns and by not having the vision of what 20 years down the road would look like, or 30 years down the road would look like, they were left with less classrooms, they were left with less outdoor space. This up there is a small portable that needed to be added because of growth. This is a lunch shelter that's exposed to the weather. The middle school students enjoy it, but it causes a lot of disruption when it rains. And there's stories that building was planned to be a two-story building with added classrooms, but because of the cost-cutting measures, they needed to remove that. For the high school, this is the latest classroom building that was built in 2010, and it's great. It was built with the Albany Aquatic Center and the pool, and so it was great timing that we were able to add capacity with that pool project. The downside was that it was one story, and it then restricted the available building space for any potential growth. So it caused less flexibility long term. This is the main high school campus. Because CHIPS was not developed during the time of this construction, then it created for uncomfortable learning spaces. They got extremely hot, and so over time we had to add HVAC to both the middle school and high school to ensure that throughout the year the spaces would be comfortable. And so we're proposing a different solution where, oh, and that's the tower. Nobody wants that. I don't. So the proposal that we have to ensure that we have enough money to rebuild Marion Ocean View Elementary is that we would need to move forward now. By not moving forward now, we lose the purchasing power. And because of cost escalation, we're essentially losing the equivalent of 3 classrooms each year that we do not move forward. It's recommended that we move forward with the largest project first, which is Ocean View Elementary. And by moving forward with Ocean View Elementary, we're able to mitigate the largest portion of cost and cost escalation. The other benefit of moving forward with Ocean View Elementary first is that it provides more flexibility to add Marion Elementary in the temporary housing solution in Marion. And the last bullet point is that similar to the middle school annex and the high school classroom addition, we would utilize what's called the design-build method, which provides a lot more competition, but control, so that we're able to really set priorities and be a part of the system in our schools. We would implement hard budgets, and we would utilize the CHIPS framework for both schools to ensure that we're able to have optimal. And so next steps would be the discussion for tonight's plan, and then if approved, we're able to move forward with planning for bond issuances next month, as well as beginning the process for the. And with that, I'll leave it up to questions.
Questions before? Oh,
Is everyone okay with me making the opening move?
go ahead.
Feels like I always do. So, thank you, Alan. It was a great presentation. Really appreciate it. I thought it would be good just to highlight the words you used at the beginning, that Marin and Ocean View were found to be seismically deficient, which is an important consideration. The reason I wanted to highlight it is that that's not the same as saying they're seismically unsafe. If the engineer's report had said they were seismically unsafe, we would have closed those schools the day we got the report. So we need to act, but I don't want people to overinterpret the seismic deficiencies. So just my brief response is the sequence seems fine to me. I think that the timing is overly optimistic. I do not think that's a schedule we can meet. And I think it behooves us to take our time and not be hasty and make mistakes and have regrets. There are at least 3 reasons why I think we should not begin construction a year from now. The first is, as you pointed out, we have not dealt with the question of temporary housing. And I think that's going to take us some time to do. But more importantly, the last design that we had, which I think staff spent a considerable amount of time working with the architect on that, does date to 2015, as I recall, maybe early 2016. I think it's late 2015. And that's a design that actually predates the board resolution to go with CHIPS verified. It also represents only half the process. I'd like to really give a big thank you to the community members who have assisted us with the middle school annex and with the Albany High School addition. I think that process of having design professionals from the community as part of our sustainability and integrated design committee, meeting with staff and working over the first set of designs has brought us to far better designs for the middle school annex and the high school addition than we had to start with. And we haven't done that yet for either Ocean View or Marin. So that's a process that could take a year to have that kind of integration of the community integrated design committee with the staff to refine what we have and make it a better plan. We just need a little more time for that. And the final reason I think is even more problematic, and that is that I do not think that we have completely explored all the options. I am concerned that we have a proposal for demolition and replacement that we have not completely explored all the options, which could include a partial demolition. In particular, the existing design may have buildings that could and should be preserved. We haven't really looked at any kind of a possibility like that. And I'll just offer, this is not something that I'm proposing, but I'm saying that I would like us to be examining some of these questions. The design that's been proposed has a number, I think I counted 6 separate buildings. One of those buildings could be built, the one that's on the north side of the easement, that is fronting Buchanan. And I know it would be tight construction to do it without demolishing any of the other buildings, but a phased construction, starting with a building there, is not something we've considered. It's an option that needs some exploration. And if that were done, the entire existing building could be used while we were doing construction, just like we're doing at the middle school and high school. It might not work, but we haven't looked at it, and I'd like people to look at it. In addition, we haven't looked at the possibility of preserving the multi-purpose room, for example. A seismic retrofit on that would retain a multi-purpose room that is larger than we would get from elementary standard sized multi-purpose room. The proposed design puts a new multi-purpose room 100 feet northeast of the existing multi-purpose room. I do not understand the logic of tearing down a larger multi-purpose room and building a new one 100 feet northeast of the old one. You know, it may be that it has a logic, but I would really like to have people thoroughly explore all those possibilities with the kind of community expertise that has been graciously granted to us for the middle school and the high school before we really get too far along here. I think we'll be much happier if we take more time.
Julie, Russ?
Well, there's an additional huge complicating factor in that, say, 90% at least of the effort going into all of this at the district offices come from you, Alan. What's your availability after July 1 for this project?
So if some of you may not be aware, I am moving to another school district, but it is not me who solely leads these projects. We have a wonderful superintendent, we have a very committed board, we have knowledgeable community members, as well as our project management team in order to help facilitate
I just want to throw in here, because Alan is leaving, so that we remember him, we're naming the glass tower high school after. From now on, it will be called the Garbage Tower.
So you know, as one of the committed board members, I have to say this feels to me like a multi-stage trapeze act that will be a miracle to pull off and too fraught with risk in various stages. That the McGregor said the secretarial site in the annex will be done in time to move students that were planning, say, early versus late. I also looking, I was involved with former board president Rosenbaum and doing the Ocean View design, and the 14 classroom portion of it that fronted on Buchanan is, to my mind, the easiest thing in the world, like building on the San Gabriel site, to consider doing and lessening a ton of risk. Right? If we're really worried about risk of seismic, can you imagine tearing down Ocean View, having the earthquake hit any time during the 2 years it's gone, and taking out Marin? And now we've got nothing. So the idea of a stage, sort of a rolling program where we increase the capacity of the Ocean View site through the construction of an annex we all kind of like, retaining as much of Ocean View as we possibly could through, say, remediation of seismic. And we never have seen an estimate of the de minimis investment. Going back to 2012, they said, and they didn't say in the event of a major earthquake, the sites will be red tagged. They said some buildings may be red tagged until they are repaired or replaced. I don't like sort of pushing it to the extreme and saying, well, we're going to lose both campuses, therefore. No. I don't think we can afford to build both of them. If you look, the amount we're sort of proposing to budget has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. I'm afraid we're going to end up with 2 schools that are about 75% of what we wished we'd gotten. After knocking down some 40-year-old buildings that could be 70-year-old buildings 30 years from now. So I'd really like to think about what Charlie's mentioned in particular of building some capacity in the space we now have. With the additional benefit there is we have a place to put the district office. This does not have dime one towards a district office, which we'll be renting for the next forever at a cost of, the cost equivalent out of the general fund of a couple of teacher positions. I'm not sure I'm willing to make that trade-off either.
Thank you. Others? No?
Okay. I think the sequencing plan is good. And so I'm there. I hear your concerns, Charlie and Ross. I think that we have rolled out the middle school annex project, closely followed by the high school project. And the fact that we have been able to get those 2 projects to the stage that they are right now, that's something that needs to be acknowledged and looked at. So that has been possible. Both of the plans for those buildings have had incredible input and collaboration from community members, from teachers, from principals. So we have managed to get 2 really solid projects that are going to be great learning spaces to this stage. On the fast track, I believe our chief business official that the longer we delay, the less money we're going to have. Construction costs are going up. So I think that some of the concerns that you raised should be looked at and discussed and considered. But I don't think that we just take the second half of our building project and put it on the back burner so that we can all mull things around for a good long time. I believe that the money that we have in this set of bonds B&E, could be spent to achieve this plan. And so I want to work with a budget, a defined budget for both projects so that I have some confidence that both of these schools can be built. Okay, and then I guess I would say about the idea I have on my screen here, the building that would be, the Ocean View building that would be fronting Buchanan. And, and it sits on top of the play yard. I do think that it would be fantastic to be able to mitigate some of our risks in case we do get a major earthquake, and to have that building, built and ready. But I also don't know how we're going to run a school without a playground. So as soon as the fences go up and that becomes an area that cannot be used, then we have 500 kids without a playground. I just don't see how that's going to work. And secondly, I'm not, in terms of this phased construction idea, I'm not sure that I would be comfortable as a parent having that large building built on the play yard, and having my kids going to school at the next building. It just doesn't really seem feasible to me when I think about the details of that. And I do believe that breaking up these projects into more and more smaller projects is going to get us into a greater cost.
Okay, so Jacob?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about the price going up, and I understand that is reality. You know, if you wouldn't mind, Alan, could you put up page 63 of the work packet? Scroll down to the bottom, please. So this is a report that was written in 2014, and it was for a complete rebuild of Marin. And like I say, we keep hearing about the price going up, and the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. That was in 2014. And we have Marin, we passed this being built in 21-22, which we're not even sure if it will actually be there. So can you give us an idea if we were to start construction in 2021? It's obviously not going to be 24 million anymore, if it's a 7 years difference. So I know that's kind of hard to just pull out of the air, but it can't be anywhere near that.
So with this, so this is just restating. So this is a budget that was built in 2014 by WLC in the facilities master plan that the option is rebuilding Marin Elementary, and so it's at 24 million. However, the estimate was planned for a 2016 construction, and so it assumed what's called 4% annual cost escalation. However, in the past few years, because of all the bonds and activity that's been going on, cost escalation has grown well beyond 4%, and so one of the things that we're recommending in our plan is that for both Ocean View and Marin, costs are going to continue to rise, and we only have a fixed amount of dollars. And so with those fixed amount of dollars, having a core design, which is what we have for both schools, and with the design build process where we invite 3 contractors to review the designs, review the meeting minutes of those meetings, and then coming up with a workshop style where they're proposing other ideas. And that's the method that we utilized for the middle school annex and with the high school addition. And with both projects, it was clear from the beginning that we would utilize the GIST framework, and that they came up with different designs than what we originally started with. And so the contractors would know from the very beginning that we have a fixed amount of budget, and they would provide options on providing a building that is within our budget. So there's options where we would just have less classrooms, but there are other options where maybe we pare down this design, or we don't have this whatever. But those are things that we would be able to work through with the creativity of the contractors and the architects proposing on the plans. But in order to get to that stage where we're really working through a real design with real numbers and a real plan forward, we would need to begin that process.
So when people say, oh, this looks good, it's not, in reality, what's going to happen? Because it does look good to me when I look at it. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this.
Right.
I'm worried about us, Ross economists, just running out of money, and that was one of the side questions. So what happens if we run out of money? So the project that's last just gets really desperate. Do we decide we're going to do 75% of both
No,
schools? I mean,
the way to protect the last project, which under this proposal would be Marin Elementary, is by sizing the bond issuances to better protect the last project from that sort of thing. And we, in either scenario, I'm recommending that we would rebuild both schools because even rebuilding both schools with less classrooms than are currently proposed, they potentially would have more classrooms than are currently in place now. What we have now is we have great site leaders and staff who have been creative in utilizing every nook and cranny and corner space. There's 2 or 3 programs currently going on at the Ocean View Library. And so by rebuilding, we would be able to really develop spaces for current programs as well as flexibility for growth. And by rebuilding both schools, we would emphasize the need for at least 2-story buildings so that if we are not able to build as many classrooms as we wanted, we could at least plan for classrooms in the future, and in the short term we can place portables for any realized growth. But under the current layouts, by just fixing both schools, we're losing space and we're losing options on adding portables.
Okay, so I want to agree with a lot of what Charlie and Ross and Kim have all said, and acknowledge that a good case has been made for rebuilding, but I don't think we have actually examined whether it's possible to build that building that's facing Buchanan. I understand Kim's concerns, and you might be absolutely right that there's no way to do it because of the loss of playing fields and so forth. But we haven't looked at it. Nobody has proposed a way to do it. And I could see a scenario where we built that building, and then Marin moved into that building and the other 2 buildings. Marin is completely rebuilt, and then we already have all that space to move Ocean View into, and then the rest of Ocean View is rebuilt. I would also endorse Charlie's comment that we have a multi-purpose room that was a middle school gym. We're very unlikely to get a multi-purpose room that size if we rebuild. So I really think we should be looking at a retrofit of that building at least. And the library is a middle school library, which is larger than an elementary school library. And we might consider retrofitting that building. But we haven't considered any of these things yet. I also, just let me finish my comments and then we'll go on. I was on the committee that worked on the Marin design. It was fast-tracked because we felt we were going to get state money. And Charlie was right, it was done before CHIPS. So it doesn't meet all the criteria. But it had a lot of input from principals, from teachers, from community members. And the educational design of that building is pretty good. And we have hundreds of man-hours and thousands of dollars in that design. And I'd hate to be thrown out and start over from scratch because we don't have hundreds of man-hours and thousands of dollars to waste in this district. So I'd really like to start with that as a bridging document for the educational design and then improve on it rather than start over from scratch. Okay, those are my comments.
Thanks, Paul. There's been a lot of work for, can everybody hear me? No. Okay, great. So there's there's definitely been a lot of work on both campuses. Definitely more for Bryn Elementary because of the full development of the plans. And with both schools, we would utilize those as like a core document for the design build process. Let's see. So we're sort of in this chicken or egg where we need a plan for temporary housing in order to move forward with construction, but then in order to move forward for construction, but in order to finalize a plan for temporary housing, we would need to know timelines and plans for construction. And a scenario that I think can address a lot of these points is with the proposal that we have in place where we would begin construction for Ocean View in 1920, and once that is completed, then we would begin construction for Bryn Elementary. That with that approval and those budget amounts, then that would be enough information for us to take to our staff to finalize temporary housing. It would be enough information for us to develop design teams and to begin recruiting for contractors to really look at some of these options about maintaining the Ocean View multi-purpose room, looking at maintaining the Ocean View campus, a building on Buchanan, and some of those scenarios with real contractor and real dollars tied to it. The concern that I have for retrofitting Bryn and Ocean View is that we would still be left with the same buildings. We would still be left with smaller classrooms and square footage. We would not utilize the best practices in building standards and high-quality learning spaces. And we have had these buildings for 50 years, which is great, but we're not utilizing best practices to maintain them for the next 50 years. And so the recommendation is if we move forward with the timing and sequence and budget allocations, then we would have contractors that can really look at some of these scenarios.
Thanks. And Ross, and then I will open it up to you.
Yeah, and everything I'm hearing you say, I have to caveat in my head with, as led by the as yet unidentified and hired chief business officer of the district. There's a lot of missing infrastructure to get all these moving pieces moving. Just one comment on the issue of, say, if we were building on the Buchanan side of the Ocean View side, it doesn't mean we couldn't do a lot of things associated with that. So, for example, we don't have to leave all the students at Ocean View. If our plan was to move the whole campus somewhere else, we could certainly move a grade out and free up that end of the remaining buildings. If there's a playground needed, then we can remove some of the existing portables as a part of that and create playground space where we'll need eventually playground space. So imagining doing X without the compensating Y and Z, I never would have talked about the insecurity of the Marin site, given that the whole place is fenced. You put, another 50 feet of fence across the front of the building and no one gets in without going through a gate. There are lots of doors at Ocean View, but there's fences too, and we haven't talked about putting some or walls or whatnot. Yeah, let's not just imagine worst case scenarios without realizing we can mitigate some of these situations. As well interested in what the policy is.
Thanks, Russ. So I'd like to open this up to the public. Those of you who want to comment or ask questions, please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less so that as many people as possible have a chance to talk. And if what you wanted to say has already been said, just come up and say, I agree. You don't have to repeat it. So with that, Oh, you have to come up to the mic, but please.
And President Black, since we don't have a timer, I'm just going to have to.
Hi, can you hear me?
You can take it out. Just take it out.
Now can you hear me? I'm Ellen Hershey. I live on Spokane Avenue, across from the middle school. I'm a community member. I'm just listening to the discussion and looking at the materials went to the board. Feel uncomfortable with the idea of approving the timing and sequence for rebuilding Marin and Ocean View without simultaneously having as part of that discussion and decision the figuring out where the kids are going to be housed during this rebuilding. It just seems to me that those two decisions really are interact and really need to be made together. Thank you.
Thank you. You might just manage it. Do we have an extra?
Microphone challenged.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Poole, the principal of Marin Elementary. First of all, I want to acknowledge that this is a really tough decision. There's a lot that goes into this when you're talking about rebuilding two elementary schools and what to do with students temporarily. I get that that's big. I also get that what's behind this is that our community has supported this with bond dollars at great cost and great sacrifice, and we appreciate that. In that, I recognize a need to commit to doing what we started and finishing what we asked for, what we said we were going to do. It kind of reminds me of the discussion earlier in the evening around doing what we said we were going to do, which was that if the community passed a bond and supported us, then we were going to come through with two safe elementary schools, we were going to plan for growth, and we were going to make it possible to have 21st century classrooms. That's not a short order. I get that. And I get that we're super tight in this budget. I get that years have gone by and costs have escalated, and I appreciate the figuring and the numbers that have gone into this. And even all that said, I support this plan. And the reason why is because the district leadership team has been looking at solutions for temporary housing. Not one that I'm at liberty to speak about tonight, but one that prioritizes keeping our kids in Albany, which means no leasing facilities that we're not going to keep long term. It means that, no busing and spending money on that, and at the end of the day, worry for all of the families who are having to deal with those logistics and sending their small children in another district. That being said, I'm worried that my school is on the list to go last. Well, given that we led this discussion with can we afford to do both? Yeah, of course I am. I also understand, though, that what we're committed to in this district is equity for all students. And I believe, at the end of the day, when you look at the footprint of what Ocean View can provide for our district in terms of the amount of land and the amount of potential temporary housing to provide for my students when it's our turn, that means that potentially we can free up the middle school and the high school buildings to have access so that those schools have access to their sites sooner. And I think that that's important to them. I'm not just worried about my school. We're all looking at the big picture. And when you take a school that in the projected cost is 10 million more, waiting 3 years down the road to spend that 10 million more, well, how much is that going to be 3 years down the road? This has already been several years. I understand, and believe me, I appreciate the creative thinking around what else can we do. I get that, and I appreciate that. And at the same time, the thought of planning a building along Buchanan on the playground while students, some of the students, all the students, are in the middle of school. Not only is that disruptive, I worry about the dust factors and the construction, the debris, and there's a lot that goes into a project this size. And it's a little different than it is for building the middle school across the street from the middle school. This is on their campus, and that's going to have significant impact. I think that moving forward with building Ocean View first allows us to at least get started in, being thoughtful about how to do that. I trust that a committee of community members, administrators, and district office officials, all of us are going to be working together to make sure we get the best, that we spend this money wisely, and at the end of the day, end up with 2 safe buildings for our kids. And the idea of waiting just makes me nervous. So, thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Good evening, my name is Terry George, and I'm the principal at Ocean. Giving us both the opportunity to speak about this, I think highlights the importance and the value that we see in moving forward with this project. I want to comment on a couple things and as far as the discussion goes. And the first comment I want to make has to do with looking back at the history of what some of our schools have gone through. Prior to my coming to Ocean View in 2007, Ocean View went through a modernization project, which took about 2 or 3 years. During that time, Ocean View students moved from portables in a parking lot back to their classrooms. From the multi-purpose room, students had to no longer eat lunch in the multi-purpose room and eat outdoors in the courtyard, in the amphitheater. The ceilings were open. The students moved from one section to another, all for the idea that Ocean View would have modernization given to them through improved HVAC, new roof, hardwire at the time. They were trying to modernize internet, which was offering them hardwiring. By the time it was finished, all the staff could see that was part of the improvement was a new paint job and a heating system, an HVAC system that worked but was twice as loud as the previous one they had. This was 2 to 3 years of disrupted education. During a period of time, the students had to stay on campus. So when this discussion comes up around keeping students on campus during construction, I would invite you to come and do a few things first. Our multi-purpose room has a floor that's close to 50 years old, and it's made out of rubber, and it's already disintegrating at this point. We have cinder wall on one side of the room that collects water and oozes water during heavy rains. We had the beam in the middle replaced during modernization, which I would think we would want to take a look at again. So I do invite you to take a look at that. I would love to preserve the size of that multi-purpose room and the library, but preserving it where we would have to turn around and spend much of the same amount of money to make it usable for the next 20 years or so, I would invite taking a look at that cost. The concern, and I'll just reiterate, the concern around air quality during construction. Please come during students coming to campus as well as release time. Let's take a look at what kind of traffic we would have on campus during session with construction going on at the same time off Buchanan and off Jackson. Please come right now and take a look at traffic. Also, UC Berkeley is adding paid sites or paid parking spots. So we're going to have a lot of UC families using our parking area. So please take a look at some of those considerations before we think too seriously. What I'm asking you to do is think of the unintended consequences to some of the thoughts and designs in an attempt to save money in doing a parcel reconstruction. And please keep in mind, the youngest students in our district are TK and our K, who will be sitting right next door to that construction. We don't have any idea on where a playground would go. The discussion or the idea of moving current portables, I understand that used to be a playground back there. But I'm not sure where our aftercare for Ocean View students then would go. So please consider all of the unintended consequences seriously before you walk away from a plan that's been thought out and discussed for many, many hours considered. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Ben Hensler. I'm on the PTA at Ocean View School. I don't have a self-interest in the plan, but I support it. In fact, my kids, under the schedule set forward for this plan, would have their school closed. She would miss her 4th and 5th grade at Ocean View School, and she would not be there to benefit from the new school. But I support this plan. And I support it, and I believe that the district needs to follow through with the commitments in the way that the bond measure was sold to us as members of the community, as parents, as taxpayers, which was that we were going to rebuild these schools. We weren't just going to remodel them. That was never part of the way that that the bonds were sold to the voters. Ocean View School in particular was never intended to be an elementary school. That's recognized here. It doesn't work for younger kids. We have great teachers, we have a great administration. They're doing their best in a space that was never meant to be a school for kids of this age. The multi-purpose room has more problems than the one that Principal Jorgensen talked about. There's a teacher who's having to use one of the rooms in that structure as her classroom with no windows because of lack of space at the Ocean View. That structure has more disadvantages for our students than it has advantages in keeping it. Ocean View School has the highest percentage of Title I students. It has the highest percentage of students of color. The idea that that's going to be a school that's going to get a remodel and when it's 70 years old, kids are still going to be going to school in this building. The idea that kids are going to have to be on that campus at the same time, that there's construction going on right next door to their classrooms, and they're going to have to learn at the same time that noise and that dust is going on. That whole idea is very disturbing to me. And I don't think that this campus should be in some way treated as second-class citizens. I think that the district should follow through with the commitment that was made to rebuild Ocean View School and rebuild it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kevin Corcoran. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Ocean View Elementary. I did have some questions that I'd like for everyone to think about. I don't know the answer to them. In the interest of cost cutting and saving funds, are the bonds and the monies in said bonds, do they cover the cost of construction and furnishing the schools, or is it just construction? Now, if it's construction and furnishing, what if we designed, and I was a part of the Ocean View Design Committee, and we are very interested in designing 21st century living space. So what if we took some of that buffer money and designed the physical plant, or the physical site of these schools, and built both schools with no tables or furniture yet, but we had the structure of the schools. That's a question I'd like people to think about. I think by retrofitting schools, we are not addressing the concern of having a safe school. As Ms. Georgian pointed out, if you come see our site and Marin sites, we're pretty porous. Yes, you can add a fence, but the fences the gates are not always locked. There are, in the Ocean View's case, there are back entrances and side entrances and delivery access points that are very vulnerable. And when you have acts of violence happening as frequently as our country is, and students that are trying to grapple with these incidents, these are things that give me pause, and I want us to think about addressing those concerns. I don't think we're doing our best to develop 21st century learners, but to do that in 20th century classrooms that aren't even top-notch 20th century classrooms also concerns me. I have been fortunate enough to work in 3 school districts. I started off in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. I worked there for 5 years in a school that was built in 1937. I then went to West Contra Costa, where I worked in 2 different sites and had less than ideal working conditions. And as marvelous as Albany is, we do not have school sites in the elementary level anyway. Neither Marin nor Ocean View right now reflects the amount of work that teachers and students are putting into their learning. And I think redesigning the schools would be a testament to and a credit to the vision that Albany has. And in terms of working in unusual circumstances and trying to imagine what it would be like to work with construction nearby, I am currently housed in a girls' locker room that was converted to a 4th grade classroom. There are no windows in my classroom. There are frosted skylights that provide less natural light than these. And today there were jets flying overhead. Thumbs up if you heard jets flying overhead. Half of my students were looking at me every time the jets were flying overhead. And these are students that they can focus in a number of challenging situations, but the prospect of trying to work with construction nearby I don't think that's tenable. I thank you for all the effort that the people on the Marin design team put into it. I know those of us on the Ocean View Design Committee spent a lot of hours after school, not just in meetings, but I know for me, researching online. And I would like very much to continue that. And thank you for your time.
And we do want to hear you all, but try to keep it short. Thanks.
Hi, I'll keep this short. Student Nathan, teacher at Marin. I would just like to agree with all the people who have stated up here before me, and just add the disheartening of hearing in the face of $90 million to put up a gate or to try to support something in some way. Being in a number of different classes at my school, I can tell you they're not conducive to learning. We have a 1 in 90 million chance now to actually move forward and do something. And there's always going to be a reason why we should wait. And it doesn't mean we should rush in, it doesn't mean we don't have to be thoughtful, but sure, we need a new financial officer. But it could be something else next year. And then 3 years down the road, we're looking at so much less money. We can't do what we need to do. So I would like, again, to reiterate that I hope we move forward. And we'll take care of it.
Hi, I'm Deborah Brill, principal at Albany Middle School. And there were just a few points that I wanted to speak to. I think that everybody sees things through their own lens. This is natural, and I know the board has a great responsibility to, manage fiscally the decisions that are made in our district, and I understand the gravity of that responsibility. But I also think that through the lens of our site leaders, of our teachers, of our community, and shown in the numbers here, the other lens is what does this look like for our students? And I think there's 2 pieces to it. I think there's the building phase, and I think there's the end product. And I know that a couple people have spoken to this, and I'll keep this part short to not be redundant, but I don't think that, where kids are playing as while the construction is happening is a tangential issue. I think it's a core issue. Kids need that space. Construction, I personally would feel very uncomfortable with knowing that we have children of that age around a construction site, both for the focus issue that was spoken about and for any of the, the environmental pieces that are happening at a construction site. It just doesn't seem like a place that kids should be while they're trying to learn. And then when we kind of get to the pieces of the final product, I think that the differences of taking a school and trying to remodel, retrofit, all of the codes that we're going to have to come up to that are going to cost all sorts of extra money, and then in the end, what do we have? A school where kids don't feel, where it's not a 21st century beautiful new school for them. It's a lot of money put into a school that's not of that same standards, and I feel like the optics around this piece of like building Marin a beautiful new school and have an ocean view, have a remodeled school is not good. And I have concerns about what that looks like for Albany as we're looking at equity issues, and really feel that all of our students deserve the best. We all want that for them. That's why we're all here. That's why we all give our time. We want what's best for our students. And in this case, it seems like there's been a lot of time and energy put into this, and I know there's always other pieces to look at. Have we looked at, could we redo this part? Could we retrofit that? But at this point, it feels like there's been a lot of time put into a plan. Would love to see that plan move forward. And the part that impacts the middle school is around the temporary housing, which I know is not the topic in particular tonight. But what I will say is that when you talk about seeing things through your own lens, I think that this topic has really brought us together as a community in the sense of, Albany middle school teachers work incredibly hard to make things work in a not adequate amount of space, right? And they're switching classrooms, and they've been waiting for the space to be built. And yet, when we look at what we need to do in order to support students in all of our schools, we are willing to do that. We're willing to take on kids from other schools. We're willing to work together as a team. We have a great team of people working together to try and figure out how to best make this work and looking at all of the details. And so, what I would say is that the longer we wait, the more problematic that becomes, right? We have a new site that's built on the San Gabriel campus, and then what? If the kids are ready to move in, then we will take them, we'll make it work. We have lots of ideas around that. If they're not, then what? Do we move our middle school teachers in and then have them move out in 2 years? Do we let it sit empty for 2 years? So there's that logistical part of all of the different implications of all of the different parts of waiting and delaying. And I just would again say, I think we've got a great team of people. There's a plan that's ready to move forward, and I really would love to see this not be that issue that just keeps getting tabled and tabled and tabled and then not happen. I would really love to see us be able to just make a decision and move forward as a district. Thank you.
Can I have a show of hands of how many more people want to speak? Okay, so I have about 6 or 7. We do want to hear from you all. Before we do, the board needs to agree to extend the meeting. Jacob?
Yeah, before we do that, I would just like to ask the audience, please, if you can stay within the 3-minute time limit. I've seen other council meetings and other school board meetings where it's not just a suggestion. After 3 minutes, people get cut off. I don't want to have to go there, it's not, I'm not the board president, but we all put in a lot of work, and it's just kind of becoming where it seems like it's optional now. Where people will just decide, we've been asked to go 3 minutes, but I want to speak longer. And just as nicely as I can ask, if people can please respect everybody's time and other people who want to speak to.
Could we get a warning then, since there is no light, because we're not on the council chamber? Okay.
You could give us I'll give you 15-second warning.
You could be the
I'll
yellow
give you
light.
30-second warning.
Yeah.
I'll give you thumbs up 30
Okay, thanks. So can we extend the meeting by half an hour? Okay.
Thank you for the time. I'm Rebecca Eros. I'm currently the TSA at Ocean View, as you heard earlier. I will be returning to the classroom, except for terribly long, which I love. And I really appreciate the consideration the board is giving to options for ways to get the most for our money. I really appreciate the time that the planning committees of Ocean View and Marin and everyone else have put into this already, designing plans and thinking about ways we can make this happen.
And I really appreciate our teachers. You know, we want the best for our kids, as do the Albany residents. They put a lot of trust in what we can accomplish by passing this bond measure, and they deserve to get what they voted for. I have a few concerns that I really want to bring concerning the kids for this. I've taught in a school where construction has been going on, and it's really hard for the very best teachers to maintain student focus. And if we're in a situation where we had construction for years, you know, multiple years at a site, while students are in class and learning, their learning is going to be impacted, no matter how wonderful our teachers are. They're kids. They're easily distracted by sounds, by everything that's going around, and I want to really maintain the best environment for our students. As the proposal was made for starting construction on the site at Ocean View, I've been at a school where we didn't have any playground and any recess. I don't recommend it. It doesn't give students the physical activity that they need to really maintain an optimal learning experience. And in addition to, we owe our students the best facilities that we can provide, we also owe them the best experience while they're there. And so I think the plan that's been proposed of getting things started, starting from Ocean View, I would certainly, am not looking forward to leaving my site and moving back, having a campus split, but I would much rather do that to get things back to normal as soon as possible, because again, that's how we provide the best experience for our students in the quickest amount of time for the least amount of money, so that everybody gets what they deserve. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Taylor. I have a kindergartner and a third grader at Ocean View. I agree with most of what Andrew said tonight. I wasn't initially in favor of doing the rebuilding because of the disruption, but we've got the bonds, we've got the money, and I think we should just go ahead and stop dragging our feet and let's get this done and get it started. My kids are actually anxious about where they're going to go to school, and it would be really great if we could get some more information about what the options are for relocation. I also wanted to ask that you be considering what you're going to do with the aftercare programs during the relocation, because there are several programs in Ocean View, some of them, and also the Y has their older kids at Ocean View, so I hope that that's going to be a factor. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Fifth graders at Ocean View. I was actually paid president at Ocean View while this had gone to be voted on the board, and my husband's also was on the committee to get the bond measures on the ballot. So we've been really involved in this issue for many years. And again, I'd just like to reiterate, we have put ourselves out there in the community. It's important to support this issue that they be rebuilt and not retrofitted. It's very disheartening to hear that is being taken under consideration, because that's not what we voted for, and that's not what we put ourselves out there for. I was going to Trader Joe's to get stopped by my neighbors, by people. We really put ourselves out in this community, watering everything. So that's what the community voted for, is the rebuild. I also just want to add, we're talking about retrofitting classrooms, possibly that cannot go to the elementary school classrooms. Many of the classrooms at Ocean View have partitions. Even without construction, there's typically from one classroom to another. We have a library that has been chipped away at. So it wasn't a school library, but since it was built, 3 other classrooms have been added into that. I think it was an office and 2 classrooms. So the library has changed from its original size. There's also talking about safety, outside safety concerns, but also the safety for the students that are inside. I've been on campus when there have been children with issues that are runners, and that campus is very hard to secure, both from an outside disturbance as well as a disturbance inside the school. And it's really distressing to see what the staff there has to deal with in terms of that campus and how porous it is as well. It already has a lot of fences that have been put in, but as Mr. Hortman said, there are a lot of openings and it's still porous despite all the fences. And then I would just like to add to, it was a middle school, and the drop-off zone reflects that. It's built for students to walk to school on their own, and not for dozens and dozens and dozens of cars that are there every morning and every afternoon. Traffic gets backed up on Buchanan, it gets backed up down Jackson Street. It's a horrible mess. It's unsafe. You have people jaywalking to their cars and narrow sidewalks. It's just a nightmare. So please take that into consideration too. It's just not a good layout for the elementary school. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Scott Mitchell. I'm a director of Ocean. I just want to reiterate comments made about turning Ocean into a construction site. I live next to a construction site, a gigantic, horrible apartment building. They also have lava. You don't want to do that. That needs to be heard. You don't want to do that. It's disruptive and it's not necessary. You pass the bond measure, make a decision, move forward.
We're going to do two more, and then we're going to move on.
I'll be super quick. I'm Michael Green. I have 2 kids at Cornell. And the first thing is we have such spectacular teachers in the school that it's beyond belief what they're there. And I think it's really interesting that something like this, you've heard from more staff than you've heard from parents. I was just keeping track. You've heard more from principals and teachers than you have from parents. So I don't know what's up with that, but that seems like people don't know what's going on. And the fact that you don't even know what's going to happen to the kids who get moved out, unless you're not telling us and you do know, either way, that creates anxiety. The person who told me about this, I learned about it the other day, told me about it because he's worried about where his girl's going to be for those 2 years. And so I think it would be very helpful for you guys to be more transparent with us about where the kids are going to go from all 3 of those schools when they're in schools.
I'll say there is a concern on the board as well. The staff is working on it. We have not heard the plan.
I was going to make the same point there on the first one, but I have a quick question. As far as all that money that the bond is issued, where does that money physically sit currently right now?
Mr. Gardner, that's
Sure. And can it be invested while it sits and waits?
So when bonds, so we have $95 million in bonds that are authorized. The school board has issued the sale of about 1/3 of that. And so with that sale of bonds, the funds are deposited into the county treasury, which generates interest. And so the funds are only able to generate interest after the sale of the bonds.
What is that interest rate?
It is not a lot because it's with the county treasury and their main focus is mitigating risk. But the but we're not able to invest it outside of the county treasury.
What rule is that? Is that a law?
Yes.
Can that be changed?
We can too. Thanks. Superintendent, you want to comment?
I do, thank you. So I'd like to make 3 points. For me as your superintendent, the quality of instruction is number 1. And I've heard and had discussions with our district leadership team, which is the principals at all of our schools and our vice principals and district office staff. I've also heard from many teachers. And what I keep coming to is our youngest learners in a place where they might have to have construction on their site. I think the older kids at the middle school, because it's across the street, can can weather that construction. I think on the high school campus, while the construction is on that campus, those are high school students. I am very concerned about our youngest learners having construction on campus. And I want you guys to know, and the board knows how much I respect you, and you're fiscally responsible. And I understand, I really do understand the need for a district office. I do. And I know that every dollar that we spend could be a teacher or two teachers. I find that I cannot recommend the building of a district office if it means that we can't rebuild both of our elementary schools. And I would rather have our district office split and to spend some money on a temporary district office for a few years if it means that we can have 2 elementary schools built. I do want to say that the loss of Allen for me is tremendous. I'm sorry. Can I have a little more time? But what I do want to say is this. I've watched and participated on part of the Marin design team, some of the Ocean View design team, through the middle and the high school, and this is a collaborative model that works. This is teachers and parents, and in some cases students and staff coming together. And with the greatest respect to Alan, because I know you set this up, this collaborative model works and will work for Ocean View and for Marin as we build it. I believe that if we are really careful and we monitor and tighten up that budget, we can get both of the schools built. And not have a district office. And I know what that means. But I really think that as your superintendent, I need to put the kids first on this one. In answer to temporary housing, let me explain it this way to the community. Our leadership team has been working for months, talking about all of the potential positives, challenges, unintended consequences that could come with various options for temporary housing for students. The overwhelming majority of us, all of us said, we want to keep kids in Albany. And that means we will need to move kids within Albany. And we are looking at how to move them as least amount as possible. What would be the best grades at the middle school, and if we have to put some kids at the high school, what the best grades are there as well. And our leadership team, our site administrators, have really risen to the challenge. They have talked with their site leaders to get the best feedback that they could. And yes, we do have a tentative plan. However, the plans could change with the decision of whether to renovate versus rebuild. And I think you can appreciate that. If you rebuild, you're moving a lot of kids. If you renovate, you're not moving as much. So for me to reveal a concrete plan, I did want to say one thing, and then if a decision changes, then we would have to backpedal and change some of those ideas. But I want you to know that this is a very well thought out collaborative model that we have used in talking about the temporary housing of students. One that we hope will be the best for kids and to be as least disruptive as we possibly can. Thank you.
Oh boy, everybody.
Thank you. I guess one last point that I would like to make is throughout my time here, I've heard the same consistent message regarding the projects for our Marin and Ocean View, and that's there's concern about temporary housing, but there is a greater need to have a plan and to move forward, and we'll be able to address it along the way. And by moving forward with the plan, then we would be able to finalize temporary housing, we would be able to provide certainty to the community, and once we're able to develop, or once we're able to finalize a plan, then I strongly anticipate that there would be growth in enrollment because families know what the plan is. There has been a hesitancy for registering our youngest learners into Albany because there hasn't been a timeline for construction for Ocean View and Marin, and there hasn't been a temporary housing plan that's been announced. And so by moving forward with the timing and sequence for Ocean View and Marin, we would then be able to move forward with bringing a plan for temporary housing, and then we would be able to move forward with researching options that were discussed.
Thanks. Now, I wonder if the board let every member try to keep it short, and then we'll see if we'll be ready to recover the money.
Okay, I think what we're being asked for tonight is a sequence. And I don't hear a lot of disagreement about the sequence of projects. As a matter of fact, I think that might be an area of commonality that perhaps we may agree that the sequence presented is the way we should go. So I just want to bring forward that maybe there's less disagreement here than you might think after having listened for the past 45 minutes. I was a small part of the annex design process, and during the process I saw those plans change. In the beginning there were more buildings proposed. There was a culinary classroom that was freestanding that had to be cut. There was also a separate building at the end, and what happened during the design process was that it changed and became better. I just saw the same thing happen with the high school edition. The bridging document, the plan, so basically the plan that we have for Marin, and I think the plans that were developed for Ocean View, I think would either be what's called the bridging document or close to the bridging document that we would then put through this design build process that has been mentioned. And that process then changes things. As a matter of fact, with the high school, the building that we'd like to go forward with is fairly significantly different. But that's what the voting members of that team voted for because it ended up to be better. I think that we need to put some trust into the process that does involve community members, parents, teachers, staff, and construction professionals from the community. That if the right building for Ocean View ends up being different than what the bridging document suggests, then that will emerge from the process. Okay, and then I want to briefly touch on the fact that although the 21st century learning, 21st century classrooms have been mentioned, my understanding that has more to do with how the space is used rather than the shape of the classroom. It has more to do with what's in the classroom than the walls of the classroom itself. Because we're sitting here at Cornell, and this is a site that is not going to be rebuilt because the classrooms are actually of adequate size and they're rectangular, which is what we're trying to get at the other sites. So I don't want Cornell to feel like they've been left with an inferior situation because actually this is the goal that we're trying to reach in other schools. I will add that having put 2 kids through at Marin, I have never seen a school so poorly built for educational purposes. It's a business, and when the teachers have come to the architects' meetings, that is what they said. I think that we could go ahead and vote on the sequence of projects. I think we could address some concerns that were raised through the design process and end up with 2 elementary schools.
Yeah, I just want to thank all the parents, the teachers, and the principals for speaking so passionately about this. I know it's a very serious issue. I'm sorry if people out there think that we're dragging our feet and that we intend on tabling this, and that we want to block the will of the voters. I don't think that's what anybody up here is saying. And as far as me personally, when I was speaking earlier about some of the cost estimates. My only concern is that we're going to run out of money. You know, I'm not against anything. I think the plans look well. And I just, from what I heard, was the board just having a discussion. I didn't really see anybody advocating to not do what the voters wanted. You know, we're just simply having a discussion. And like Kim said, I think we'll find out in a second, but I think we're all in agreement as far as moving forward with the timeline and the order. So I'm sorry if people think that we're dragging our feet and other things. I don't particularly see it that way, but sorry.
Thank you, Jim. John?
So, thank you. Well, I think we probably should observe that we are sitting in the oldest elementary school in our district, Cornell Elementary. And if there's a school that's approaching 70 years old, it's Cornell. It's not Ocean View. Ocean View is 40 years old. That said, I am concerned that the plan leaves $0 for any kind of work at Cornell, because that was not really part of the original proposal. There was work to be done at Cornell. You know, I've heard just as many people in the community express concerns to me about tearing down a school that's 40 years old, as have been speaking to us about moving as quickly as we can. They're just not here tonight. So there are many voices to be heard, and I think that that's part of the problem. We have not had the open public discussion that we should be having about the whole sequence and timing and overall nature of the project. It needs to be part of the public discussion. Now, what I'm hearing is that we have a plan for temporary housing. Well, we haven't heard the plan. Again, that's part of the problem. The plan is a plan, but it hasn't been brought forward into an open public discussion of any kind. I understand the plan, where we don't know if the plan works until we know something else. But to ask us to vote on being ready to turn the shovel in the summer of 2019 without having all the pieces of information that we need is not something that I think I can do. I'm comfortable with the sequence. That's fine. I'm even comfortable with having a go at the timeline. But if tonight's vote means that we are committing to starting construction in June of 2019, I'm not there. I don't think we have all the information. I don't think there has been sufficient public conversation, and I don't think the plan is ready. I think there's a lot of kind of design development that's needed. I think it should be observed, as has been just briefly mentioned, that in fact we have a project which is next on our agenda, if we're able to get to it, in which we will be doing construction at a school site while school is in session. And we've been assured that people know how to do that. So on the one hand, I'm hearing this can be done, and on the other hand, I'm hearing a great deal of concern about doing it. I think we need to look at that a little more closely. There are some pieces that could be done right away if we wanted to. There's no reason at all the drop-off zone could not be configured the way it's designed in this plan starting tomorrow. Just if you look at the plan, that could be done. So there are pieces that could be done sooner, and I am willing to have a go at the timeline, but if the vote tonight means that we are absolutely committing to starting construction in June, then I can't do that.
Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, very few points. First, the issue of kids on the site at Ocean View during construction is a bit of a red herring, and that we don't actually have to. If our idea is to tear down the whole of the campus and rebuild a whole new school, we'll put the kids somewhere else. We could do that. Whether or not we tore the whole thing down or tore a portion of it down or built on a currently unoccupied parking lot and use the whole rest of the space for other things, the district office for the interim, renting it out to whomever. Tearing down the whole campus would mean removing all those kids anyway. We could do that. I think there are interim steps or other things we could do if we weren't going to tear down the whole campus. And I really think, my thought on this, I don't think we have enough money in this budget to justify, that will get us schools good enough to justify tearing down all the stuff that we were thinking about. I would love to have a larger bedroom. I absolutely would. And the best plan for me is to build an extension on my existing bedroom rather than knock the whole house down and build it up from the ground again. We have never, I think, and I've been on this board for a little over 3 years, I don't think we ever have heard an estimate on what it actually would cost to just do seismic remediation. We got A or B, and an A or B originated prior to this superintendent. And A was put a couple of stories on and add all these things and trigger all of these code problems, or knock it down and build a whole new school. We never heard about option C or D or E, and I think it's more than ample time to revisit it. I actually would agree with Kim that if whatever we're going to do next probably happens at Ocean View. You can absolutely differ between knocking the whole place down or building on a portion of it and with surgery figuring out what you can retain of everything else. I think actually that's where I'd probably end up. So doing something at Ocean View, including something that will be disruptive, will require moving kids, is probably my guess of what we will likely do. And then lastly, Bell's talked about, well, not having a district office for a few years. If we go forward on this, and if we manage to squeak out both schools with what limited money we have left, you're talking about a 20, 30-year horizon to anything next. No district office will be rented. No opportunity to pick up a property if it comes on the market. No opportunity to have the expansion capacity if suddenly the state decides that universal pre-K ought to be something the districts provide. They'll give us the funding for the kids, but no place to put the kids. And other things on our long-term plan, which included, say, renovation of the little theater. Right? We've got a high school of 1,400 kids or so, 1,200 kids. A theater that seats 300 can't even really wedge in one grade in the theater at the high school. That's why we're using Memorial Hall. So I'd really like to preserve a little more flexibility, in part by not pushing everything to the wall to try to get schools that I worry aren't going to be the schools we'd even want to replace schools that are largely functional and maybe highly so with a little bit of care to retrofitting and whether or not we build some or all of this expansion.
Okay. So what I've heard, I was very impressed with the unanimity of the comments from the audience. Nobody was arguing against doing any of this project. That has influenced me compared to what I came in here thinking. I think that Charlie kind of put his finger on where I think we are. I think we have good agreement at the sequence that the audience was unanimous in endorsing the sequence, starting with Ocean View and going to Marin. And there are good arguments for trying to get started 2019. The longer it takes, the less money we have to complete the project, and that means the less we'll end up with. I completely agree with Ross that following this plan means we will, probably in my lifetime, never have a district office. But the kids do come first, and that's just an expense I think we'll have to sustain, because operating expenses and building costs come out of different budgets, and we have the building costs. We have the building money now. The operating money we're going to have to figure out separately. So I think we're ready to vote on the sequence and the intent to start in 2019, assuming we have both a building plan and a plan for moving the students that the board is comfortable with in time to start that construction. That's what I would like to have a vote on if we could get a motion on that.
No, I'm not frowning. I'm sorry.
Cringy.
No, and I'm not cringing. I have a clarifying question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm hearing clearly about the sequence. The timeline, I guess, where I'm confused is the decision to rebuild versus renovate. Is that still something that's going to be for further discussion? Okay, because, and the reason I'm asking for, just for logistics reasons, is the plan for temporary housing for a rebuild is different than the plan for temporary housing for a renovation or retrofit.
How can that be?
How can that, because the plan for temporary housing for a rebuild is moving all kids. If we are, and I use the example that Ross, I don't know if you used this word in the previous word about building a building, then we may not necessarily be needing to move all kids. So it would potentially be a different temporary housing plan.
But it might, even renovating might require moving all kids. We've certainly heard a lot of people say that it would.
Yeah, well, if you're having construction on the site, what's the difference whether it's a renovation?
Not saying putting girders in a couple of classrooms so much as building 14 classrooms on the north end of campus and addressing seismic would be a renovation at a pretty.
Okay, so if it's whatever the decision is, if it is moving all kids, then I will bring a plan forward.
Okay, so.
I loved how you said it. I wish I could move it, the motion exactly as you stated it. The sequence as presented in the plan and the timing as a goal if the board approves the design plans and student location plans that will be presented in the future.
That's perfect. Charlie?
You know, if you're willing, I'd like to add that we have a public discussion of the options, not just that we get a series of plans brought to us that have been decided during committee meetings.
Yes, I think that the plan, the options need to come to us.
Yeah.
And be discussed with the public. And we've got a good turnout for this, and I hope we can get a turnout for Russ?
So my sense of what we're sort of collectively saying, given that we have some differences on sequence, is we anticipate a disruptive construction event at Ocean View and one at Marin, not until we resolve what happens at Ocean View. And then all of that depends on, or seems to depend on the execution of the San Gabriel and Albany High sites, given what we're anticipating out of moving students around. That may or may not be true, but from a sequence perspective, I'm happy to say, I think when we spend significant money on construction next, it will be at Ocean View. And it may be anything in a range from raising the entire site to construction to dealing with the site in some other fashion, and then only after that happens would we get to Marin. So you can absolutely let people know that there's year windows within which this might happen.
I think that states in another way. So I don't have a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Now, you've been waiting a long time there. Do you want to say something that's going to change any decisions?
No, it's not going to change the decision. I just had a question. I'll email it later.
Okay.
I do want to just second what the gentleman said. I think I'm one of the few Cornell parents who may be affected, and we just found out about this meeting the last day or two. So when you say, it makes me a little nervous, although I support having kids be safe and, 21st century, all equity across the board. But please don't guide your decision based on what the audience has said, because a lot of our Cornell folks aren't here. And we would be, had we known what was going on.
If we have any more discussion, it has to be at the microphone. We can't do it from the audience. And if what you want to say is not going to affect the vote, then I'd rather that we have the vote, and then we'll have more discussions about this. And certainly, we'd love for you to email us or come up after the meeting to talk to us, if that's all right. So we have a motion and a second. So all in favor of going forward with this scenario, with this sequence with an aim towards starting construction in 2019, but with public conversations around the specifics of the plan to move kids and the construction plan. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for turning out. Your input was very helpful and is valuable. And if you want to hang around for a few more minutes, you'll see the plans for the high school, which your kids are going to be getting to eventually. Okay, so we have used up our extra half an hour, and we have a couple more.
I walk all the time and
We'll need to extend that, Jacob.
Anything that you can put to the next meeting before we extend?
Contracts here.
I think the contracts could be
I think it'll be pretty quick. I hope it'll be quick.
But I think that we would benefit from seeing the presentation a lot because we will see the fruits of the good work that everybody's been doing.
Okay, so can we have another, okay, extension 10:15? That is up. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Board. So this next item is officially the incorporation of the high school classroom addition project, removing the amphitheater and incorporating that scope into Alton Construction. We have Eric Andreessen from Alton Construction and Brent Randall from LCA Architects, and they'll walk through the latest design. We've had a lot of meetings over the past month, and so they'll be able to go through the development, and we just wanted to take that time to share the latest.
Great. I hope you'll fly us through the.
He does all the flying.
Can we lower the lights a bit so that we can see the street?
All right, here we go. Good, thank you.
Actually, one of the board members is not here. I'd love to have everybody be able to see it. Are we going to do a second pass?
Yeah.
You should narrate it better.
Yeah.
Where's the background?
Well, when Jacob comes back, we'll run through it again with a little narration so we can get worried.
go all the way through. I'll go through the slides, and then we can see it at the very end again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna switch to the slides. Or I want to-
We're gonna
Yeah,
finish
just
this.
watch it through and then we'll talk, and then we'll just get, that's like kind of closing. After we talk through it a little bit, we'll just play. Yeah. There were birds. Yeah. It's right out of bird time. They only like for days. There's your tower. Oh, yeah. You gotta put a plaque in the animation for you next time. Good evening. My name is Eric Andresen with Alton Construction. Here with Brent Randall from LCA. We're part of the design build team. Currently working on the high school classroom edition. So we've worked really diligently with the design committee over the past 5 weeks to get a schematic design complete. We're still on schedule to deliver this to the state. I think June 1st or the first week in June, I believe, June 4th. So I was going to let Brent kind of walk you through some of the things that have changed since the last time we made a presentation, and we can go through the flyby again afterwards.
Thank you, Eric. Just wanted to reiterate with Eric, it's fun to stand here and realize that there were 4 of you that participated in the meeting. And I feel like I can see in each of you that you're very excited and pleased with how it turned out. And it's been very fun to have you be a part of the process, as well as Lauren, who is also part of the bridging documents. So.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Al.
So one of the things I wanted to do in this show is, I believe the bridging documents have been known for quite a while, and wanted to show how the design that we ended up with is really an evolution that took that as a starting point. And there were certain differences that came about as the committee really discussed it, thought it through. There's just a couple things I'd like to point out with this image. On the second floor, there's an outdoor learning space that's really associated only with one classroom. And the kind of the front part of the L shape has a design build component on the first floor, and at that point, a computer lab on the second floor. Can that go full screen? And you can see the large courtyard right in the middle there. So then if we go to the next slide. Wow, that's really not cooperating. So you see the next slide. It's still the L shape, but it's modified. And this came about because the learning space component of the project was very important. Now you can see, you'll see it later on, between the 2 buildings now there's a much more substantial patio for both the first and second floors. And the front building got a lot bigger, and that's because the design build space needed a 2-story volume, and it worked better for it to be next to a learning space instead of having a learning space on top of it. And the courtyard here gets a little bit cut off, but effectively what happened was, because the building grew a little bit, the courtyard shifted towards the tower, but really is the same size. During the course of, well, pretty much I counted it up, over the course of 8 meetings, including the 3 confidential meetings, we spent 20 hours together, debating and discussing and considering every detail of the project. There were many things discussed, and we just wanted to highlight. The courtyard really was the main concern. As previously discussed by Alan, that one-story classroom building went on next to was positioned right next to the aquatic center. It was a good building there, but not 2 stories, and it kind of left just one last part of the campus open for development. So there's been a lot of angst and concern and desire for the school not to lose the heart of the campus. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out how to put the courtyard in while providing 8 21st century classrooms that were flexible and adaptable. We talked about the makerspace. Some things were added during the process. There was a desire to include staff restrooms and a staff workroom, so the building grew a little bit. And then throughout this process, there's a desire for this to be very sustainable and to be net zero energy target. So just to kind of run you through how did the building change and develop. This is the bridging document showing the original L-shaped building with the courtyard. Then we analyzed the site for the available building area. There's a lot of, if you straight up on the slide would be east. There's a lot of area there that looks like it could be developed, but there's easements there that prevent development. And we have certain clearances we need to keep away from buildings. So we took that as a starting point. And then if you overlaid the bridging documents with that buildable area, the buildings are generally just a little bit outside that buildable area. So we kind of needed to take that area and put it into the square. And then as I said before, there was added program scope to the bridging documents. That was the staff restrooms and staff workroom. And that made the buildings bigger. So the solution was effectively to keep the classroom L part the same. We made the space between the buildings larger so that we could get those outdoor learning spaces for both classrooms, for all the classrooms. And then we got that benefit of having the design build and the learning space next to each other. And the school courtyard is still the same size, but it's shifted down closer to the main entry on Key Boulevard. So this is the colored site plan. There's a lot of detail in there. We've talked through so many details, but the highlight really is the courtyard. The brick pattern pulls you in. There's an informal stage, some stairs that lead up to the classroom. We really thought of this addition as being a completion of the Gen 7 classroom, that one-story collection of 4 modular classrooms right there, so that the same palette of materials and everything, it will read as one complex. So this is a view in the courtyard looking toward the building. Straight ahead would be the learning classroom on the first floor and then a staff workroom on the top floor. And then you can see a staircase leading up towards the upper outdoor learning area. And then this is looking kind of into the project where you have the both levels. There was a lot of, again, every aspect of this project was considered by the committee. We discussed through everything. And the desire was to make the space underneath the upper deck very pleasant for people, for students to congregate and gather. So a lot of thought went into how do we provide light, how do we make it interesting so it has this kind of a rippled corrugated effect underneath with integrated lighting and creative solution for how to get light downstairs while providing a very usable deck up above. And then, a nice deck up above as well. You can also see the louvers. This speaks to the desire to deal with sustainability, provide shading for the windows, and keep direct heat gain to a minimum inside the building. So that's, again, the layout of the project. Something we are showing is the photovoltaics on the roof. We have great solar orientation on this project. The roofs face south, And the solar panels may or may not be a part of the project, but the project is being set up so that it's solar ready and so it can hit the net zero target for the project. And then, Alan, I know it sounded like you wanted to
Wrap it up with this. Thanks, Brent. And so with this, we have a timeline for construction for the Albany High School addition. In order to submit plans to the Division of State Architect, we essentially have 9 weeks in order to go from where we are today to complete detailed plans. And typically that is a concern because that is a short time frame. But by having the goal of having the building complete by July 31st, 2019, then staff, architects, and our team are able to work within those constraints. And so we have milestones that are set. We'll be able to work with the staff on still collecting that input while we continue to move forward with finalizing the design. And by having that long-term, by having that goal, then our staff are able to fit within that goal to deliver. And so with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Thanks. I just want to make a quick comment that we have Alan Maris here in the audience, and when Alan was on the board, he worked tirelessly to start a career technical education program in the district. And a major part of this project is a large makerspace, a 2-story makerspace, with an adjoining learning space that can be used as a computer lab for computer-aided design. And I think you'll be really happy with that. That's going to come out. Do we have other questions from the board? Jacob.
So this is one where we're approving the extra $130,000 to...
Correct.
Because I didn't hear that discussed.
Right, so you want to talk about what we're actually
Yes.
approving tonight?
So what's actually being approved tonight is the incorporation of the removal of the high school amphitheater into also construction scope of work. The reason for that is then they're able to lay out what's required for removal that fits in line with this design.
Okay, so we're approving a contract.
Correct.
With all them to do that.
Correct.
Just a quick thank you. I'm pretty sure that Brent and Eric have never participated in a process before that involved so much engagement and so much time. I think they've been a little bit surprised at us in Albany, but the result was right there to see. I think these are incredible learning spaces. It's a beautiful addition to the campus. It creates a new, improved heart. So we're gaining a lot with this, and I so look forward to seeing this project go forward.
So you want to run that animation?
Should we run it while we...
Yes, while we Okay, now we need to extend the meeting. Okay, Jacob?
Just one more quick one. I know this was just to approve the extra 130 for the, taking down the amphitheater, but on the slide that one of the gentlemen just showed a little while ago, it talked about what the community was asking for, and I did see security on there again, so I'll just throw out one more plug. Last time I talked about, it'd be hard for me to...
Security fencing.
Yeah, and especially with the speakers tonight. I mean, I know the elementary, the kids are younger, but to me, they're all our kids. So it seemed like it was really important for the elementary schools. I heard, the safety issue. So sorry if I'm getting off track, but just one more plug again for some kind of security fencing at the high school.
Yeah, we did discuss it in the meetings, and we looked at where fences and gates could be put. It's doable. It's not currently part of the project, but it was discussed. Do you want to comment on it?
Yeah, so I think if I can represent the group correctly, the discussion was that it was a concern and it needed to be addressed, but that it fell outside the scope of this particular project, which is landlocked inside the campus, that those measures might need to be closer to the student sidewalk to adequately address sealing off the campus if that's what's desired. So we it can't really secure our area. It's a larger issue that sits for the whole campus.
So completely separate from this project?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Charlie.
Just thought I'd add relative to what we're actually voting on. I believe there was always a plan to spend $130,000 or whatever it is on demolition. The only thing we're doing tonight is adding that scope to the Alton contract rather than setting it out as a separate contract. And Alan is nodding.
That is correct.
Good. Any other comments?
I move that we approve this contract.
Second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for coming here and showing this to us and all the work. Okay, so we have a few more contracts. The next one is amendment to Derby Castellanos Architects Agreement to provide CHPS commissioning agent services for Albany High School.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Alan Gordon.
So this contract is an amendment to Derby Castellanos Architects. They are currently the CHIPS commissioning agent for the Albany Middle School Annex, and also the project architect or the project manager for the Middle School Annex. They're the project manager for the high school edition, and by adding on the commissioning portion of it, we're able to be more cost effective, and they have staff on hand that specialize in being able to.
Okay, so this contract and the next one both have to do with CHIPS. The next one is for CHIPS consulting services. So can you just clarify the difference between commissioning and consulting?
Yes. So for commissioning, that's going from where we are today, working with the architect on design and specializing in specifying equipment and systems that would meet the CHIPS criteria, and then through implementation and operations of the systems, making sure that their work as designed and that staff internally have manuals prepared to know how to operate them. For CHIPS consulting, Greenwood Consulting is also the consultant for the middle school annex, and what a CHIPS consultant does is they're the third-party reviewer who works with the architect to retrieve documentation and ensure that what they're designing meets the criteria of CHIPS.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion to approve this contract for CHIPS commissioning agent services.
So moved.
Second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The next contract is for the CHIPS consulting services with Greenwood Consulting.
I'll turn this back over to Alan Gordon.
Kind of already been discussed.
Yeah, it's been said.
Do we have a motion?
I think we could move that one too.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve it.
Okay. Charlie?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good, now we have another amendment to Castellanos Architects Agreement to provide project management services for general maintenance and facilities support. This is a separate issue.
Thank you, President Black. And the purpose of this item is for the board to consider the approval of this agreement to Derby Castellanos Architects to work with me as an interim facilities and general maintenance support services due to the vacancy of our chief business official. Having this interim consultant will help provide facilities general maintenance support services. We all know the company that we have been working with DCA, and what they will do is they will help with the coordination and relocation of our district office, some routine coordination with our chief lead maintenance and chief lead custodian, as well as our business and maintenance secretary, helping support and lead the lead testing of our schools, and also to coordinate with our school site administrators on facilities needs. And the person from this company will be working directly with me in this area. So this is for an interim, and the costs for this contract will be offset by the cost savings of not having a chief business official.
Okay, so among the very many things that Mr. Gard has done for us is he's overseen project management, and he's also, the next contract we're going to consider is for general financial services, and together that makes up probably half of what Mr. Gard does, but in order to move forward in his absence, until we can hire a replacement, we need his.
My humor is free.
You get what you pay for.
Do we have any discussion of the agreement with Drury Castellanos? Okay.
Yeah, is there any assurance that the cost is actually going to not exceed what we were paying out? I mean, because it wasn't really, the way I read it, it wasn't really.
Yeah,
It was just kind of, we were assuming that it was going to cover.
I don't think that I can give you a 100% ironclad guarantee. My goal is to weigh the cost of having the interim, but also being able to know that I have someone that can work with our chief leads and to work with our sites and work with me to keep at least the maintenance and facilities side. And of course, for the next item also is going to be for the fiscal side. So I could not give you a 100% guarantee, but I will do my very best.
Just one last, I just wanted to thank Alan for all of the hard work that you've done.
And this is something where we could, approve those expenditures and request that as things go, we report. We've spent in the month of May X amount via these two contracts, Ryland and this one.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so do we have any motion?
Yeah, I just want to, before I move that, I'll just mention that I think that we're lucky to have Mr. Barossa, who has been working with us for a while already as project manager. So that eases the sting a little bit of losing Alan. Yes, I move that we accept this contract.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Which brings us to our last contract, which is with Ryland School Business Consulting for general financial services support, because we still will need to get budgets out even.
Yes, so the Ryland School Business Consulting, this is a company who employs people who understand school finance. They are retired chief business officials, fiscal directors, and the Ryland School Business Company is used by several districts using an interim and until we can find a chief business officer. This is critical because this is the person who will be helping me develop the 18-19 budget adoption for June 2018, as well as making sure that we align our budget with the LCAP. We'll be helping with board presentations, and of course we'll be working the general financial analysis and then the day-to-day fiscal operations of the district.
Okay, any comments, questions? Or a motion?
I think we better approve this contract. I move we do so.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
With great thanks to Mr. Gard. I hope you'll come back for the dedication of the plaque on the guard tower.
Absolutely.
Before we get too far towards adjournment, may I ask that we put the current design as we see it here on the district web page? We still have the previous version.
Yes, let's get the video up there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda items, matters introduced by the board.
Yes, we have two items. One is the public discussion of options, which I know will also include the cost of retrofitting, I believe was asked for. The second is the a plan for temporary housing for students to be brought forward for discussion as well.
Okay. So,
And if we can retrieve the minutes to find out what we had said about, if we were saying that there was going to be no layoffs for certificated staff or staff in general. Because sometimes the minutes are incomplete, you know, I don't want to spend all my time going through all the old YouTube videos trying to figure out.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, and yes, the other item was that we were going to bring back the classified layoffs as a future agenda item as well. I think it was the January 9th meeting. I do not.
It sounds about right.
It's
Because we had one here in December too. I think it was said here and it was said.
Yeah, and I think what, you know, Jacob, there's a part of me that thinks it was here as well.
Yeah.
Because my memory recollection.
That's when we first decided that we weren't.
Right, so I have to find when that is. And again, I'm hoping that it's.
December 5th maybe.
It was December, I'm hoping that it was caught on video.
There was a special meeting in December, it was here because it was, there was a special meeting in December here because it was a special meeting that would be the 5th. And that's when we discussed Fund 17, as I recall, and using it.
So it might have been the December 13th, 14th.
No, I think it might have been the December 5th.
I'm sorry?
It might have been the meeting here.
The January 9th meeting? Okay.
December 5th, I think, is when.
Okay, December. Okay, we can check on that.
good. I think that's it. Meeting is adjourned.